Chapter 8:18. Black Index Finger could endure mockery, taunts, and disdain. He knew that the person he was about to face was also very good at mental attacks. However, he was helpless against the blackmail of 4 million gold coins, because it was something he couldn't do. Since he couldn't do it, there was no point in enduring it anymore. If he died, then so be it. After the Black Index Finger tore off the paper, its gaze turned to 1,000 Miles Drunk. Gu Fei didn't move. He felt that since the young master of the Han family had agreed to sit with the Black Index Finger, he must have a goal in mind. There was no reason for the young master of the Han family to shamelessly provoke the Black Index Finger. There was no benefit in doing so, and it didn't seem like the style of the young master of the Han family. Seeing Black Index Finger tearing the paper in anger, Han family young master didn't get angry. He still asked with a smile, "What's wrong? Are you in trouble?" Black Index Finger was expressionless, and didn't answer Han family young master. He was already calculating in his heart. If he were to make the first move and put his life on the line, would he have a chance to achieve anything before 1,000 Miles Drunk killed him? At this moment, the private room in the tavern was small, and if he used Whirlwind Slash, while Black Index Finger was thinking, he suddenly heard Han family young master say slowly, "Guild Master Black Hand, did you come here on behalf of your guild? It's not just your guild that made a mistake this time." Black Index Finger was startled, and his brain started working again. He heard Gu Fei remind Han family young master, "He's called Black Index Finger." "What's Black Hand?" "Oh. Really? Just call him whatever you want. People can understand it anyway," Han family young master said. Black Index Finger didn't care about the random name that Han family young master gave him. He finally knew Han family young master's purpose. No guild could afford 4 million gold, yet Black Index Finger had assumed that Black Index Finger was deliberately looking for trouble. Now, however, he realized that Black Index Finger really wanted to collect the money. Moreover, Black Index Finger's target wasn't just him, but all the guilds they were working with this time. The total number of participating guilds had been roughly calculated. There were more than 20,000 players, and if they were to split 4 million gold, that would be 200 gold per person. With this calculation, the asking price of 4 million gold became very realistic. 200 was an amount that most current players would have. Due to the changes to the currency rules, the trading market was deserted, and everyone was saving money instead of spending it. 200 wasn't an amount that would embarrass anyone. It was an amount that would make one's heart ache after spending it, but it wouldn't be too painful. The mistake was made by everyone. There's no reason for your guild to bear the responsibility, right? Han family young master said. Black Index Finger was extremely touched. Back when young Master Han was settling the scores, he had wanted to say that the Black Alliance wasn't the only one who caused all of this. Why did they have to bear the responsibility? The current situation is so obvious. If we continue to fight, we'll just lose more and more people. Everyone has PK points, and any equipment dropped would be worth more than 200 gold coins, right? Han family young master started calculating the debt for Black Index Finger. Black Index Finger didn't answer. He was thinking. If they were to split the losses evenly, money wouldn't be a problem. The problem was whether everyone was willing to accept it. To put it bluntly, it was quite humiliating. There were so many players, and there were definitely some who were brave. If there were a lot of people who would rather die than submit, then this whole thing would definitely be over. Black Guild Leader, I believe you need time to think about it, but it's best if you do it quickly. Right now, people are dropping levels and equipment every minute. Han family young master said. But the situation in the main city isn't under your control, right? Black Index Finger was confused. From his point of view, the cause of this situation was that guy from Against the Current. He appeared at the wrong place at the wrong time, and did something that he shouldn't have done, causing the situation to spiral out of control. Right now, almost every guild in the main city was involved in this battle. Black Index's 20,000 players were minuscule compared to this. Moreover, They were working together with Unsworn Sword and the others to suppress Counter-Current's forces. They had the upper hand. The current situation? That's a fight between your guilds, it has nothing to do with us. Our target has always been clear. Don't you know? Han family young master said. Black Index finger froze when he heard this. Indeed, the division of power in the main city was quite blurry. Everyone was looking for guilds that they didn't normally deal with as opponents. Many guilds were attacked even when they weren't doing anything. They started to defend themselves and then went to look for other guilds that weren't doing anything. They weren't like Qianli and the others. They had a clear goal, and their damage wasn't on the same level. Alright, I'll think about it. Black Index Finger said that he would think about it, which meant that he agreed to it. Actually, he wanted to contact the other guild leaders to find out the truth. I'll be waiting for your good news. Han family young master smiled. This compensation. Is there any room for negotiation? Black Index Finger held on to his last strand of hope. Han family young master slowly shook his head. Black Index Finger sighed, and after saying goodbye to the three of them, he left. Do you think this will work? Drifting asked after Black Index Finger left. Whether it works or not, the benefits outweigh the drawbacks. Han family young master said. Oh. If it works, then we'll just take the money. If it doesn't work, then it's because there are different opinions in those guilds, or there are different voices in the same guild. Once there are differences, of course, there will be people who choose to leave. Compared to this guy saying that he won't kill us if he leaves, it's much faster to make one threat after another. Han family young master said. So, it's more beneficial for them to accept this condition, Drifting said. From the guild's perspective, it's true. At least, it can protect the guild. So, the guild leaders will probably agree. It depends on how they convince the players in their guilds. The only obstacle is... Han family young master suddenly stopped. It's this guy's slogan of, no killing after leaving the guild, right? Drifting looked at Gu Fei. Han family young master nodded. It gives them a way out, but it's a big loss to leave the guild. Now, it's only 200 gold coins. If it were me, I would definitely pay, Drifting said. But there are always people who don't have many guild points. Han family young master said. That's true. Drifting nodded and turned to Gu Fei. Why don't you go out and kill a few more? Tell them that you won't kill after leaving the guild. I have a list here. Drifting was obviously greedy for the 4 million gold coins. He worked very hard and even took up the job of compiling the list, which he hated. I'm going to Moonlit Night City to clean up the PK list. Gu Fei stood up. Oh. You're going to change your slogan to kill after cleaning up the PK list? Drifting's eyes flashed. Gu Fei's eyes were cold. If you can't do it, why don't you lend me your equipment? I'll do it. Drifting's equipment was the standard equipment for sorcerers. If he put on Gu Fei's Night Spirit robe and Night Streamer, he would only be able to kill instantly. Speed wasn't important. He could definitely kill his opponent with one spell. With a flash of white light, Gu Fei was teleported away. The two were helpless. Obviously, Gu Fei didn't want to do this. Compared to the two of them, Gu Fei was much more principled. Cloud City had already entered the stage of peaceful resolution, so Gu Fei temporarily didn't have any place to use his skills, so he flew to Moonlit Night City to do quests. This made the surveillance team nervous. Moonlit City wasn't very peaceful right now, and there were many players with PK points. If this guy went all out, wouldn't he be able to fill up the entire dungeon in no time? What's going on with the program? It's been so long, and they still haven't solved it. The leader couldn't hold it in anymore. They sent a GM to invite Gu Fei to cooperate again without a quest. The game company wanted Phase 2. A subordinate immediately called them, and the answer was that they still needed some time. Everyone looked at the leader, and the leader helplessly looked at the ceiling, let him do it for now. We'll talk about it when he can't hold it anymore. When Gu Fei arrived at Moonlit Night City, he didn't immediately start the quest. He knew that Yun Zhongmu and the others were also doing something big. Moreover, this was more or less because of him. He couldn't see the guild when he started the quest. If he took Yun Zhongmu's people and caused trouble for them, Gu Fei would feel bad. As such, he first contacted Yun Zhongmu and asked him to provide him with a list of enemies so he could do the quest himself. As soon as Yun Zhongmu heard about this, he was overjoyed. He immediately gave Gu Fei a list of the enemy's experts and didn't hold back at all. Give me as many as you have. Gu Fei expressed that Yun Zhongmu was being too polite, only sending him around 10 names. How many PK points do you want? Yun Zhongmu was confused. After I'm done, I'll do the quest for a while. We're almost done, Gu Fei said. Oh. Yun Zhongmu was shocked. Even though the other side couldn't deal with Gu Fei, they were still an alliance of tens of thousands of people. How could they be dealt with by this guy alone? The situation is quite complicated. We're trying to resolve it peacefully, Gu Fei said. Right. With the current situation, it's best if we can stabilize it. A gentleman's revenge is a dish best served cold. Yun Zhongmu said. Gu Fei saw that this guy was worthy of being someone who could stand tall under Silvermoon's suppression. Just from this sentence, he could see that this person was actually quite patient and had quite a bit of perseverance. Gu Fei didn't say anything about Yun Zhongmu's plan to settle accounts later. He only accepted the quests that Yun Zhongmu handed over. Seeing that their PvP values weren't low, Gu Fei guessed that they were all experts. Gu Fei was naturally very happy. However, there was actually one quest that he couldn't accept. Of course, that was because he didn't have any PK points. Gu Fei sent a message over, Old Yun, did you give me a cleric? I'm here for a bounty quest, not to be an assassin. Oh, I was too careless. Yun Zhongmu flipped through the list that he had just sent. Sure enough, there was a famous enemy cleric. He really had forgotten about this problem for a while and only sent over the list of people that he felt were difficult to deal with. Moonlit City, a neighbor of Cloud City, had suffered quite a bit from Qianli's drunken feast. They were more or less numb to it. Moreover, the PK level here was higher, so they could better understand how terrifying Gu Fei's strength was. At this moment, Gu Fei came out and directly targeted the experts of the opposing team. Very quickly, 3 people had already entered the dungeon. There were also quite a few people in the team who tried to obstruct Gu Fei but were killed by Gu Fei. The opponents already knew that Yun Zhongmu was friends with the #1 assassin in the game. However, Proud Emperor and Weeds thought that Gu Fei was busy with his own matters in Cloud City and had no reason to care about this side. They didn't expect him to suddenly appear and specifically kill the experts. They were originally not a match for the 10 Guilds Alliance, so their morale plummeted and their hearts started to become extremely unstable. In Cloud City, after Black Index Finger left the tavern, he quickly contacted the guild masters. On Unchung Mutsu's side, after hesitating for a moment, he still called him. The powerful Mudcloud Guild was already in the past, but at this time, most of the people who still hadn't left either had feelings for the guild or didn't want to give up the guild points. These people might be supporters of compensation and peace negotiations. Black Index Finger now needed support. He felt that the Han family young master insisted on 4 million just to force him to do his best to make this happen. He wanted to see how many people would support him first. Perhaps there was still the possibility of discussing the price. 4 million. This was a random calculation. What 200 scrolls? What super elites? Black Index Finger wouldn't believe this nonsense even if his brain was damaged. Of course, he didn't dare to tell the others about this list. In his heart, he just wanted to pay some money to settle this matter. This shameless bill was completely useless in convincing the others. Many guild masters were currently fighting on the front line. Some were unlucky enough to be sent to jail when Gu Fei messed up quests. At this time, Black Index Finger couldn't contact them, so he tried to find their second-in-command who was currently commanding outside. Hearing that Black Index Finger said it was very important and had to be discussed face-to-face, everyone gathered together. When Black Index Finger first saw this group of people, tears almost fell down his face. Just one day ago, most of the people present were guild masters with a little bit of fame in Cloud City. However, looking at them now, their faces were full of sweat and their equipment looked a little worn out after a long period of fighting. What was more tragic was their level. 2/3 of the people present had more or less dropped a level. For example, Black Index Finger and Unchung Mutsu, their level had dropped below the 40 mark. In short, it was tragic. What is everyone busy with now? Black Index Finger asked. On the spot, half of the people were very unhappy. They said it was an urgent matter. Why did they have to say such nonsense when they came? One of them said with an unhappy expression, "What do you think we are busy with? Do you remember why we are here?" said the Black Forefinger. Everyone's face showed a painful expression. Everyone was busy now, and the busy matter seemed to have nothing to do with their original intention. Everyone had already chosen to undergo amnesia. Regarding that matter, they knew that they had already failed, completely failed. No one thought that the act of going against the current would actually cause the whole city to be more lively than the city war. Now it could be said that every guild could not even take care of themselves. Even when they were at their peak and fully focused, they were tormented by Qianli to the point of vomiting blood, let alone now. Now everyone was just worried that this Qianli would jump out and give them a fatal blow when he was drunk. Everyone simultaneously looked at Unchung Mutsu. He was the tragic victim of a fatal blow. One ambush, and the guild was basically destroyed. Now there is a chance, Black Index Finger said slowly. Everyone's face was numb. Was it to deal with Qianli again? How many times had they said that they had such a chance today? Which time didn't they vomit blood? At this time, it was already a good thing that Qianli didn't take the initiative to come to them. Why was he still asking for a chance? Everyone looked at Black Index Finger and didn't want to listen anymore. Black Index Finger carefully observed everyone's expression. Seeing this reaction, he was very pleased. Everyone was desperate to deal with Qianli, so this time, they would like what he said. Seeing that someone was about to turn around and leave, Black Index Finger hurriedly said, "This is a chance to get drunk with Qianli and make peace with him." Hearing this, everyone became spirited. Their lifeless faces were full of vigor that hadn't appeared for a long time. Some people couldn't wait to ask, "What chance?" Some people thought faster and already thought of something. They opened their mouths and asked, "Did they mention their conditions?" Black Index Finger nodded. "What conditions?" "Money." Black Index Finger said the key. "How much?" Black Index Finger extended 4 fingers. He wanted to see the bottom line of these people's psychological endurance. 40,000. A guild leader who didn't know much guessed. 40,000. Before Black Index Finger said anything, Unchung Mutsu snorted disdainfully, "This is a blackmail against all of us. 40,000 is just a beggar's number. Look at our number, I think it should be 4 million, right? 4 million. A few people were already screaming. Black Index Finger nodded slowly. Some people wanted to curse, but Unchung Mutsu was already calculating, if we split it among ourselves, it would be less than 200 gold per person. The other party calculated the number of people we have. Everyone in the room was silent. All the guild leaders had already started to calculate. Right now, Cloud City is in a mess. We can still handle the situation. Now, Qianli and the others are staying out of it. We don't know where their people came from. In short, they aren't from any guild in Cloud City. They won't be attacked. What they need to do is to find a chance to give us a fatal blow. Also, did you forget about the idiotic act of going against the current? At that time, he had obviously chosen to stand on the side of against nature. What about unhindered? Between the rosy clouds? Their firepower was attracted by going against the current. If it wasn't for the stupid act of going against the current, what kind of situation do you think we would be in? Everyone continued to be silent. Our life and death are now in the hands of Qianli and the others. Black Index Finger concluded. Everyone, think about it. We will vote by raising our hands later, Black Index Finger said. Chapter 8:19. It was very quiet. None of the guild leaders made a sound. But communication was inevitable at this time. There were also some guild leaders who were familiar with each other. Those who were familiar with each other were secretly communicating through messages. Black Index Finger was the busiest at this time. Many people messaged him for details, which made him angry again. He shouted, "What's the message? How many times have I said it? We're all in the same boat. What can't we discuss together?" The guild leaders who were still messaging were startled. Their faces were a little awkward, but they quickly recovered. But then they looked at each other and no one spoke. If anyone has any other way to get Qianli drunk, why don't you say it? We can discuss it, Black Index Finger said. Everyone was silent. If there was a way to get Qianli drunk, it wouldn't be like this now. Finally, a guild leader spoke. It was the question that everyone was most concerned about. How can we guarantee that they will stop after receiving the money? Black Index Finger glanced at him. If you have another way, then question this question. Everyone was silent again. What Black Index Finger meant was, we have no other choice. But the guild leader who was pushed back by Black Index Finger said unhappily, if we can't be trusted, at least we won't lose money. Why don't we care about this question? This is already the only chance. At least everyone has no doubt about the character of the very overpowered guild leader, Sword Demon, right? But Sword Demon is in prison now. What kind of question is that? We can make this deal in the dungeon in front of Sword Demon and get his promise. Black Index Finger's brain had not been idle. He had already sorted out many questions. Whether it was trustworthy or not, of course, he had to think about it. He wouldn't forget such an important question. Okay. Then let's take this gamble. How many people do we have in our guilds? Won't we know if we calculate? So the guild leaders reported the number of people in their guilds. In total, there were 20,000. But compared to the original lineup, thousands of people were gone. Only then did Black Index Finger notice that some of the guilds he had notified didn't even show up. They had quietly withdrawn from the guild a long time ago. There are 20,000 people, but will all of them agree to this condition? A guild leader asked worriedly. If they don't want to, we can only ask them to leave, said the Black Index Finger. All the presidents looked at each other. At least we can protect the guild. If not. Black Index Finger glanced at Unchung Mutsu. He didn't know what to say, but Unchung Mutsu took the initiative to continue the conversation. If not, we'll end up like Muyun. Even if the brothers in the guild are still fighting, how can I let them continue to fight? To be honest, before Black Guild leader brought this news, I was already considering disbanding the guild and letting the brothers go their separate ways. Unchung Mutsu's words were the most convincing. His guild was currently in the worst situation. It was already half destroyed. Even if they managed to hold on for a while, they didn't know how far they would fall in Cloud City. Normal players might not care about the guild, but as a guild leader, especially one who created and brought the guild up, the feelings they had for the guild weren't ordinary. Protecting the guild was a huge temptation to them. This was also why when the group of guild leaders heard the news from Black Index Finger, they were considering the feasibility of this matter. No one showed any bravery at all. Their bravery had been worn down by Gu Fei time and time again. At this moment, they only wanted to protect the things that were important to them. But if the members are too unwilling and leave the guild, will the remaining people be able to gather this huge sum of 4 million? One of them said. I've been thinking about this question. I've noticed something. The asking price of 4 million sounds scary at first, but considering the number of people we have, it's a very affordable price. That's why I think the other party took into consideration our ability to bear the price. They didn't randomly give us an amount that we can't afford to make things difficult for us. Since the other party can understand this, when the number of people who support this matter drops, I think they might take a step back based on the new number of people we have. Black Index Finger said. The Black Index Finger found it hard to make a convincing expression on his face, because he had been doubting whether the 4 million yuan was really taken into consideration or just fooled them. When he thought about the 200-plus scrolls, 70 super elites, favors, transportation fees, etc., Black Index Finger would rather believe it was the latter. However, he couldn't say these things at a time like this. He could see that all the guild leaders were tempted. Black Index Finger himself was eager to make this happen. He shuddered when he saw what had happened to the Sheep Cloud Guild. Let's vote by raising our hands. No matter what, I agree. Unchung Mutsu was the most desperate among all the guild leaders. He was the one who needed a lifeline the most. Black Index Finger let out a long sigh. It was the right decision to call Unchung Mutsu over. This despairing guy affected everyone's emotions and made them look at the problem from a pessimistic perspective. In the end, they had no choice but to agree. As expected, under Unchung Mutsu's lead, many guild leaders quickly raised their hands. Some of the players who were still hesitant slowly raised their hands after seeing that there were many people who raised their hands. Moreover, the players who raised their hands consciously stood to the side. In the end, it was no longer a vote by raising their hands, but a vote by the side. 2 minutes later, only 3 guild leaders were still hesitating. What do the 3 of you mean? Do you still need to think about it, or have you decided not to walk the same path as us? Black Index Finger asked. We. The 3 of them looked at each other but didn't say anything. Although Unchung Mutsu was desperate, he didn't lose his intelligence. Seeing the 3 of them acting suspiciously, he had an idea and said, "You want us to be the touchstone? After we find out that the conditions are feasible, you will compensate them and ask for peace?" The 3 of them were shocked when they heard this. They immediately denied it and said that they only wanted to think about it. 1 minute, Black Index Finger said, "I'll give you 1 more minute. If you don't want to join us, I'm sorry, but we will have to tell you that you are not willing during the negotiation. Otherwise, are we going to be the ones to blame for your troubles?" Black Index Finger's words put an end to the 3 guilds' schemes. In less than a minute, the 3 of them finally stood to the side. All right, then everyone can go and negotiate with your own guild members. If they are not willing, tell them the pros and cons. Let them understand that they will lose their guild and have to fight alone, Black Index Finger said. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. One of them said, "You mean, we need to give the list of players who are not willing to pay and quit to Chinli?" Black Index Finger was expressionless. Otherwise, how can we convince them to give us a discount with the number of people? Or are you willing to pay 300, 400, or even 600 each? The guild leaders were silent. The situation was already decided, but some people started to hesitate again. Black Index Finger was a decisive guy. He hated the hesitant looks on their faces. He said coldly, "Everyone, our main goal now is to protect the guild, not a certain person in the guild. Everything should be for the benefit of the guild. If there's a guy who's not even willing to sacrifice himself, why should we protect him?" Silence. This was the umpteenth time in this guild leader meeting that everyone fell into silence. After a while, someone finally spoke up, "I think I should ask my brothers in the guild first before deciding whether or not to go down this path." Once this suggestion was made, the hesitant people quickly nodded and expressed that they wanted to do the same. Do whatever you want. Black Index Finger was too lazy to say anything else. He had already decided that even if no guild was willing to do the job, he would take his remaining people and negotiate with the overpowered guys to compensate them and apply for protection. From the moment the Black Index Finger had this thought, the alliance of guilds that had encircled the Heaven-defying Guild Alliance had completely collapsed. They had completely fallen into a state of self-destruction. Black Index Finger didn't care about the other guilds at all. He took a deep breath and sent a message in the guild channel, "Everyone, please stop what you are doing. I have something important to say. The negotiations with the guild members all had their own reasons. Some said that the guild's benefits were the most important, some said that they wanted to keep the flame of the revolution alive and take revenge in the future, and some said that they had no other choice but to live. Anyway, they all said the most tragic things. The Shepherd Cloud Guild was mentioned 100% in the process. Admit defeat and compensate them. No matter how extravagant the negotiations were, that was the truth. What surprised the guild leaders was that the resistance they faced was much smaller than they had imagined. Most of the players in the guild let out sounds of relief when they heard this solution. It turned out that they were already tired. Countless people were already hesitating whether to leave the guild to avoid this storm. But now, they could get rid of this terrifying killer by spending 200 gold. 200 gold. This was a very subtle number. Any player with the slightest bit of experience wouldn't feel the pinch over 200 gold. If not for the recent currency adjustment, which had temporarily blurred the value of money, most people wouldn't even bat an eye at 200 gold. Smooth, very smooth. Our guilds all agreed. A guild leader was the first to speak up excitedly. 3 of our guilds left. This result was also very beautiful. 5 of us. 4 of us. Our players who don't have any money at the moment will support us even if we borrow money. In comparison, Black Alliance had the most people who had left. There were 49 of them. It couldn't be helped since their guild had the largest population base. Moreover, it was a big guild. Experts always had more pride. Of the 49 people who left, 32 of them made Black Index Finger's heart ache. They were all people who were not easy to recruit. But now, Black Index Finger wrote down the names of these 49 people. He would hand them over to Overpowered without hesitation. They wouldn't have a good ending. According to the latest statistics of the guilds, there were still more than 20,000 people. 4 million gold was not much of a problem. Black Index Finger quickly sent a message to Han Family Young Master and made a request. He wanted to complete this transaction in the dungeon in front of overpowered guild leader Sword Demon. Han Family Young Master agreed without hesitation and informed Gu Fei, asking him if he wanted to come and see this historical moment. Han Family Young Master and the others arrived earlier in the dungeon. Black Index Finger and the others still had to collect money. Moreover, the flames of war were raging in Cloud City. Although the 20,000 of them were trying their best to avoid fighting, they would still be accidentally dragged into it. At this moment, the guild leaders had already issued a death order. They were determined not to fight. They were determined to finish this overpowered matter and then rest well. In the dungeon, all the overpowered players were online. This was of course the order of Han Family Young Master. He specially went offline to contact Brother Yu. As the people in the dungeon were preparing to go online at the same time, they left each other's offline contact information. Brother Yu was one of the contacts. At this moment, hundreds of people appeared in the dungeon. Compared to the previous time, some time had passed. Many people had left the dungeon. Gu Fei looked left and right at the empty dungeon. He really wanted to ask the GM if the lack of cells had been resolved. Why did you call everyone here? Hurry, I'm about to go out. Brother Yu asked anxiously. Yes. Hurry, we're about to go out. Many people had already used up their time. They were just waiting for the last minute to sit down before going out. Hurry up. If you don't say it, we won't be able to hear it. Someone saw that Han Family Young Master was still not in a hurry and shouted. Han Family Young Master rolled his eyes at these people. He carried out his best mockery. If you go out, can't you come back through the main door? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. However, there was strength in numbers. Someone quickly thought of an excuse: you have to pay. The visitation fee was not cheap. Money? Ha ha ha, what is money? As Han Family Young Master laughed, Brother Yu and many others who only had 1 minute left the dungeon, the group was helpless. They could only pay the visitation fee and quickly ran back. Seeing that Han family young master was still standing there silently, they said together, "What's the matter? Hurry up and say it." "I've already said it," Han family young master said. A bunch of people went crazy. Other than Brother Yu, who was already used to this fellow's viciousness and could still endure it, the others had the urge to immediately fight with Han family young master. Brother Yu looked at the others who were still in the dungeon. All of them were beaming with joy. It was obvious that Han family young master had brought great news. However, when he looked at Sword Demon, he didn't seem too happy. What was it that made everyone happy, but Sword Demon didn't seem happy? Brother Yu was thinking when Yutian Shinming shouted, "Brother Yu, we're rich." "Oh. What rich?" Brother Yu asked hurriedly. 4 million, this fellow extorted 4 million from those guys. Yutian Shinming shouted. 4 million. Ah. Brother Yu quickly calculated. It was very heaven-defying. 50 people divided it equally. Each person would get more than 80,000. That was a huge sum. It was really a huge sum. It was no wonder that Sword Demon wasn't too happy. He obviously wasn't keen on extortion. Just as everyone was getting excited, Black Index Finger and the others finally arrived at the dungeon. At this time, there were many of their subordinates in the dungeon. When those fellows said something about 4 million, they already felt that something was wrong. Now that they saw their president appear in the dungeon, they were all stunned. The guild leaders were also sweating. They were so focused on negotiating with others that they actually forgot about these guys who were in the dungeon. "I was wondering why the money wasn't right," one of them said. Every guild had received less than the theoretical figure, so they didn't react in time. Now that they were in the dungeon, they realized that a bunch of people had been forgotten. However, all the guilds tried their best to make up for the difference. At this moment, they had already brought a full 4 million. These guys in the dungeon had saved money. However, doing a transaction in front of these guys that they didn't know about made all the guild leaders feel embarrassed, including Black Index Finger who had always been very determined. "Everyone, you're here." Han family young master was very enthusiastic. The players inside and outside the dungeon also showed a great welcome. Everyone loved people who gave away money the most. Black Index Finger saw the situation and could only bite the bullet. Although he had brought all 4 million, he still had to try to bargain for the price. Black Index Finger walked forward with a troubled expression and said, "I'm sorry, Brother Han. Because some of the brothers in the guild are very conflicted, it's difficult for us to collect the money. Can we reduce it a little?" "Sure." Han family young master's quick reply surprised everyone present. Before Black Index Finger could express his gratitude, the OP players were already shouting, "No," in protest. However, some of them who were slightly shrewd kept quiet and just stared at Han family young master. They knew that Han family young master's "sure" was a foreshadowing. "As long as any of you can answer one of my questions correctly, I will return all the compensation to your guild." Han family young master was very arrogant. He didn't treat the money that he didn't get as his own. Amidst the protests from the OP players, the guild leaders were overjoyed and quickly nodded, "No problem." "What's the question?" Black Index Finger was especially eager. His guild had the most members and naturally had the most share of the 4 million. "This question is a little difficult. I'll allow you to answer it through messages. My friend list is open now. Next, please listen to the question." Han family young master announced, and the guild leaders all nodded. "Who's the traitor among these guys?" Han family young master asked as he pointed at the OP players inside and outside the dungeon. At the same time, Gu Fei already held the Night Streak sword in his hand. Chapter 820. As soon as these words came out, both inside and outside the cell, everyone, be it friend or foe, was silent. When Brother Yu and the others first entered the dungeon, they had already pondered about this mole. Water Depth had even come up with a lot of bad ideas, but in the end, they couldn't think of any effective way to find him. It was quite difficult to find a mole in the game. In comparison, it was very difficult to be a spy in the real world. Eavesdropping on phone calls, stealing safes, and entering confidential computers were all risky. In the game, everyone didn't have to be so professional. Basically, they were in the guild in name only, and could receive information from the guild channel at any time. It was even better if they could get a core position. Sending information to one's own people was a dangerous thing. In the game, as long as they sent messages, wrote emails, or even contacted each other offline, the system would know. It was extremely confidential, and they didn't have to worry about being exposed at all. What was more worry-free was, even if they were exposed, so what? If they left the guild and went back to their own guild, they would still be a hero. If it was a mole in the real world, once they were exposed, they wouldn't be far from death. That would be real death. The psychological pressure was countless times greater. Digging out the mole was very difficult. Otherwise, the leaders of the major guilds wouldn't sit by and watch as their own guilds had so many traitors from other guilds. But now, the Han family's young master had grasped this special situation and used a special method to openly dig up a heaven-defying spy. It was truly incisive. The incredibly powerful players were looking at each other in bewilderment, and so were the people of Black Index Finger. But everyone's opinion was quite consistent. This move by Han family young master was very sharp, and the mole was probably going to be exposed soon. Everyone thought so, including the mole himself. This person was also very straightforward. He knew that he was very likely to be sold out by the guild leader. Rather than being sold out, it was better to be sold out. So a strange scene appeared. A guy who was still in the dungeon suddenly jumped to the cell door and shouted loudly, "I am the mole." At this time, people did not care about their anger anymore. They were all shocked by this traitor's behavior. Many people could not figure out why he was so brave to admit it. Did he really think that there was such a thing as leniency for those who confessed? In the end, it was the Han clan's young master who revealed the truth. He smiled and said, "Because this friend has a very high level of awareness, and his answering skills are superb, Mr. President, you're in for a tragedy. There's no discount. Just pay the original price." Only then did everyone understand. The traitor knew that he was going to be sold by the president for money, so he decided to be the first to expose the truth while the presidents were still hesitating. For him, the outcome would be the same. However, for the president who had lost the chance to answer, he could not save money even if he wanted to. All the presidents were depressed and handed over the money gloomily. "Let me do the dirty work." Brother Yu bravely rushed over to receive the money. Very overpowered players were besieged together and imprisoned together. It was the easiest to build a relationship after going through thick and thin together. At this time, seeing Brother Yu's appearance, the people inside and outside the dungeon happily shouted together, "Brother Yu, do you have such a heavy burden? Who do you think you are?" Brother Yu did not even turn his head. Black Index and the others were naturally embarrassed to stay there. After saying goodbye to everyone, they were ready to leave. However, Brother Yu raised his head and said with a sincere expression, "I haven't counted the money yet." All the presidents were depressed. Gu Fei was the kindest. He waved his hand and said, "Forget it, go. If it's not enough, contact me again." All the presidents felt as if they had been pardoned and almost ran away. Some of them even started to worry in their hearts. Did I count the money wrongly? What if it was really wrong and Qianli contacted us when he was drunk? What did he mean by contacting us? A hint? A threat? How are we going to divide the money? Brother Yu asked excitedly while holding the money bag. "We'll divide it equally among the three of us. It's none of your business." Han family young master pointed at Gu Fei and said to Brother Yu after drifting. Brother Yu froze in place, and all the players froze in place. Yutian Shenming pointed at drifting and shouted, "I protest. Why can the guy who ran away come and divide the money? I strongly protest. Protest is invalid." "This is the arrangement of the organization," Gu Fei said. Drifting smiled and went over to take the money bag. Brother Yu was still in a daze and forgot to stop him. What is the total number of people in the dungeon? Han family young master asked Brother Yu. 51. Oh, no, 50. Brother Yu remembered that he had to reduce the number of traders. Do the division. You know how to do it. Han family young master patted him. Brother Yu knew that Han family young master was joking, so he asked happily, do you want to divide by 4 million? 2 million. Han family young master said. Brother Yu didn't say anything. Although it was a magnificent feat for the few of them outside to solve the crisis, if the gap was too big, it would still cause the poor people to be dissatisfied. Reasonableness was actually quite a difficult thing to do. Brother Yu was observing the other players' reaction to this distribution, but he heard Han family young master say, there are many people outside who helped us. Oh. Only then did Brother Yu react. Then, he began to feel ashamed that they were only in prison to keep their lives and get money. Look, balance is really difficult. Qianli doesn't have any vulgar interests. You don't have any interest in money, right? Han family young master asked. Whatever. Gu Fei didn't care. However, Han family young master still took out a bag of 50,000 gold coins and threw it to Gu Fei. Then, he took 50,000 for himself. The people in the prison had already done the division. After the 2 million yuan was divided, each of them would have 40,000 yuan, while the two heroes would only get 50,000 yuan each. It was impossible for anyone to have any objections to such a distribution. Drifting was smart enough not to put himself at the same level as Gu Fei and the young master of the Han family. He took 40,000. This was what Han family young master had told him, you won't lose any brothers in prison. However, at this moment, Drifting realized how despicable the young master of the Han family was. He did have a lot of brothers in prison, but Gu Fei and the young master of the Han family only got 50,000 each. How much more could he get? How could he take more than these two people? If no one was here, he wouldn't care. At this time, Gu Fei took out 40,000. Seeing that Gu Fei was still hesitating with 50,000, Drifting became nervous. He sent a message to Gu Fei. Don't be so polite. If you don't take out the money, who will have the face to take it? Except for that Han family young master. After receiving the message, Gu Fei smiled and pocketed the money. Then, Han family young master kicked the money on the ground. Love is written on the left hand, handsome is written on the right hand, and Sen is written on the other hand. These four people had more or less played a role in the difficult struggle outside the dungeon, so they each took 40,000. Don't kick it, don't kick it. It'll refresh soon. Brother Yu hurriedly put the money away. 50,000, 4 to 500,000, so there's still 7 million left. Han family young master calculated and then looked at the people in prison. Did anyone die and drop equipment? Everyone scratched their heads. We didn't die. We're in prison, so we won't drop equipment. Oh, did anyone drop a level? Han family young master asked. Everyone turned their heads. The lonely sword demon was there alone. He had dropped 2 levels. Sword demon takes 100,000 more. Brother Yu said. If sword demon took more money, he wouldn't feel the pinch at all. Everyone saw how hard sword demon was playing the game. For an expert of his level, they had never seen anyone drop levels so fiercely. Brother Yu sometimes felt scared when he thought about it. He felt that watching sword demon drop levels had almost left a psychological scar. How could sword demon face it so calmly? Although the sword ghost was by himself, he was also participating in a very heaven-defying prison conference. When he heard this, he only replied indifferently, there's no need. His tone wasn't one of modesty or politeness, but one of true disapproval. Guild leader takes 100,000, guild leader takes 100,000. A bunch of people were shouting. Everyone was convinced by Sword Demon as their guild leader. Otherwise, we don't want it either. Someone even shouted. Everyone, I'll keep it for you. I'll keep it for you. Brother, you didn't care what Sword Demon said and took 100,000 for Sword Demon. Give me 50,000. Han family young master signaled to Brother Yu. What? Dropping 2 levels is 100,000. I dropped 1 level. Han family young master said. Fuck, wait here. I was wondering why you would suddenly be so kind. Yutian Shinming rebelled again. 100,000 isn't for dropping levels. If you're the guild leader, then give him 100,000. What do you guys think? Unscathed in Battle also joined in. They wouldn't say anything about how much they gave to Sword Demon. They also felt that giving 1 gold to Han family young master was very unreasonable. It would be best if they could scam him out of tens of thousands like last time. That would be great. Many people responded to Unscathed in Battle's call. Everyone shouted yes. Thus, Shin Shui beamed, really? The guild leader has 100,000. Give me 100,000. Unscathed in Battle was startled, but Unscathed in Battle's reactions were always quick. He immediately asked, who are you? Shen Shui was furious. Is there someone like this in our guild? Unscathed in Battle asked Yutian Shinming. No, I think he's a spy from Forest Shade City's extreme cold. Yutian Shinming said seriously. Hey, Brother Yu, did you make a mistake in your calculations just now? Do you count people from other guilds? Unscathed in Battle said. There's no need to count this. Han family young master nodded. Grandson of the Han family, you beast, animal, inhumane, scum. Eat shit. Shen Shui cursed. Speaking of which, we should study this traitor brother. Han family young master turned a deaf ear to Shen Shui's direct insults. What's your name? Han family young master asked the traitor. Shen Shui. The traitor replied. He knew that it was impossible to hide it. The guild could easily find out who he was. Even if he immediately left the guild, Brother Yu would remember everyone's names when he started counting the time they spent in jail. He could still eliminate him. Is he from the studio or the guild? Han family young master asked. Shen Shui didn't say anything. Studio. Han family young master concluded. Studio isn't afraid of death? Gu Fei asked. Han family young master nodded. If there's no level, you can transfer to a clerical job. Clerical job? Shen Shui, who thought he knew the studio the best, came up. There's a level in the game. Those who need to fight, do missions, or collect materials for the studio are considered martial jobs. The others are clerical jobs. What about those like 5 Nights? Gu Fei asked. Those are more like clerical jobs. Those who don't lose their level are considered clerical jobs. Shen Shui said. Then they are official employees of the studio. Brother Yu said. Should be. Shen Shui nodded, then turned to ask Shen Shui, are you one? Shen Shui still didn't say anything. He would say his name if he couldn't hide it, but other things were another matter. Looks like he can't say it. His bonus might be deducted. Brother Yu said. How much is a month's salary? Bai Shi Jingluan was interested. He had been dealing with studios a lot recently. A big studio should be good. Water Shin said. As they discussed, nostalgia was forgotten by them, leaving nostalgia in a daze. Is it still necessary to kill him? Gu Fei asked. The Han family young master was deep in thought. Is everything fine outside? A player asked. Not really. The other guilds are still fighting. Gu Fei said. What happened? Someone asked. I don't know why they started fighting. Gu Fei pretended to be innocent. The players in the city didn't know how they felt when they heard this. Come to think of it, most players didn't know where the fuse had started. Let's go out first. Han family young master waved his hand, let's see what's going on outside. At this time, the people sitting in the dungeon were all experts. Experts had high PK points. They had been in the dungeon for a long time, so they couldn't get out. On the other hand, the low-level players had all come out. They followed behind top experts like Gu Fei and walked out of the dungeon. When they walked onto the streets, they realized that the other players were taking a detour. They were immediately energized. With 40,000 gold in their pockets, some of them were so happy that they wanted to cry. The Han family young master sent messages along the way, asking about Against the Current, asking about the Sword of No Oath, asking about Gu Xiaoshang's situation. Against the Current's face was covered in tears. He complained bitterly about how he had fallen to such a sad state in order to uphold justice for Against the Heavens. For us? Then why did they start fighting with unhindered 4 seas? Han family young master feigned ignorance. They. Against the Current really wanted to throw mud at unhindered 4 seas, but he knew that he couldn't treat Han family young master like an idiot. What didn't this guy know? The more he thought about it, the colder his heart became. He suddenly realized that if he did this again and again, in the end, all the guilds in the city would fight against each other. His strength would plummet, and he would be sitting on top of the mountain to watch the tigers fight. Were they the ones who directed all of this behind the scenes? But it didn't seem like it. Against the Heavens was indeed in a difficult position at the beginning. On Unsworn Sword's side, he had finally defeated his old rival, who had been fighting him since the start of the game. He was in an exceptionally good mood, and he even chatted with the Han family young master, who had never been liked by others. He even asked about the situation of Against the Heavens with great concern. On Gu Xiaoshang's side, after winning the city war, she had become very close to the Han family young master. Moreover, she had always been a straightforward person, so she did not hold back and said, "You guys started this mess. We're innocent. Is winning the city war a mistake too?" At that time, everyone was fighting to make mistakes. Han family's young master replied. Gu Xiaoshang was instantly speechless. Then, Han family young master asked her to objectively evaluate the current situation. Gu Xiaoshang also honestly gave her opinion. Against Music had suffered from the combined attack of the 4 major guilds, and had suffered great losses. Currently, they were completely holed up in the resurrection point, and most of them had chosen to go offline. Their main opponent, reigning the 4 seas, was preparing to retreat. Locking a guild in the resurrection point was not something that a single guild could do. Either way, Against Music had already suffered great losses. Unsworn Sword was prepared to persevere in the days to come, and use a month's time to completely crush Against Music. Currently, everyone's opinion was the same. Against Music, unless Qianli suddenly joined them in a drunken stupor. What's the situation like? Brother, you waited on the side for the results of the Han family young master's investigation. If the situation continues as it is, Shepherd Cloud Guild is crippled, Against Music is done for, Black Alliance is half crippled, and although reigning the 4 seas and between Rosy Clouds have also suffered some losses, their morale will definitely be extremely high, said Han family young master. Do we still need to do anything? Asked Brother Yu. Let's split the money first, said Han family young master. When he had just left the prison, he had already contacted Boundless Mang, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and Lan Yi's 2 groups, and now they were all under Boundless Mang's command. Boundless Mang didn't know that the matter had already been resolved peacefully. He brought his troops over, but what he saw was Gu Fei, Han family young master, and the others standing on the street as if nothing had happened. What's the situation? Boundless Mang asked cautiously. Split the money. Money? What money? Those fellows caused so much trouble for everyone and felt really bad. After I tried to talk them out of it, they finally found their conscience and decided to turn over a new leaf. Boundless Mang didn't even finish reading the Han family young master's message before closing it. He walked over with a dark expression and glared at everyone. What's going on? Brother Yu started to dig out money, bag after bag. As he did so, he sent a message to Han family young master. Should we give all of this to them? Give them 1 million, and leave 600,000 for Yun Zhongmu. That's how much is left, right? Said Han family young master. If you don't want your level to drop by 50,000. Brother, you said. To be honest, I deserve 500,000. If it's 50,000, then forget it, said Han family young master. Then I'll split it like this. Brother, you said as he handed over money to Boundless Mang, here's 1,000,000. Everyone split it. Boundless Mang's mouth was wide open. Lan Yi, Tsubasa Sakaratsuka, and the others were all shocked. 1,000,000, this was a huge sum that no one present had ever seen before. These OP players had just seen 4,000,000, so they were very calm. When they saw the shocked expressions of the people in front of them, they felt a wave of pride in their hearts. To be honest, giving out 1,000,000 just like that was quite painful, but when they saw the other side's reaction, they felt a sense of superiority. The other side seemed to have 200 to 300 people. Giving out 1,000,000 meant that each person only had 3,000 to 5,000. Such a small amount, what was there to be surprised about? The OP players were now rich and overbearing. They're really losing money. Boundless Mang was surprised. Back then, they fought to the death in Moonlit Night City. Who would use money to buy their lives? Boundless Mang couldn't accept such a useless thing in his mind. Chapter 821. Since she couldn't accept it in her mind, Boundless Mang pushed her away and refused. As for the two groups of people behind her, Lan Yi's group had similar thoughts to hers, so they weren't surprised by Boundless Mang's rejection. However, Tsubasa Sakaratsuka's group was so anxious that they were scratching their ears and cheeks. For the first time, Tsubasa Sakaratsuka had the urge to shout out that he didn't know this woman. Han family young master swept his gaze across the faces of the group of people in front of him, smiled, and didn't care about Boundless Mang's rejection. He pointed behind her and said, "If you don't want it, then someone else wants it." Boundless Mang turned her head, "Who wants it?" Lan Yi and the others naturally didn't say anything. Tsubasa Sakaratsuka really wanted to say something, but for the sake of the girl, he could only grit his teeth and swallow it. But Tsubasa Sakaratsuka's group of brothers didn't care. This group of wretched fellows made a living by teasing girls. Although Boundless Mang was tough, they didn't care about it. Give face to Tsubasa Sakaratsuka. That would never happen. Hence, after Boundless Mang asked, the group of playboys rushed out like the wind, shouting, "We want it, we want it." Tsubasa Sakaratsuka's cheeks streamed with tears. Lan Yi and the others didn't want it. If it was just them, each person would get about 20,000. He had sacrificed 20,000 to pick up a girl. Girl, did you know? Han family young master and the others didn't care about this side. In any case, the money was given to them. Whether they wanted it or not, it was their own business. 1,000,000 was just thrown out like that. Han family young master and the others didn't care anymore. The playboys didn't seem to have the idea of equal distribution in their minds. Looking at them, it seemed like whoever snatched the most would get the most. After a round of snatching, there seemed to be a flash of white light. Everyone was sweating profusely. This was really a group of inhumane fellows. Lan Yi looked at these fellows with disdain. He felt that his current image was exceptionally high. He turned around and looked at his brothers. They were all staring at the group of playboys in a daze. Not all of them were born with this temperament like Mang Mang and Lan Yi. Some of them were gradually nurtured in such an atmosphere. Most people were like this. If you behaved like a playboy, it would not be harmonious. You would be despised and ostracized. So not everyone in Lan Yi's group was not tempted. Many of them were like Tsubasa Sakaratsuka. They really wanted it. However, Tsubasa Sakaratsuka was worried about the girl, and they were worried about how their companions would look at them. At this moment, they were all crying in their hearts. After a series of bloody and swollen snatches, the money pouch was gone. However, it was unknown which pouch was broken, but a few gold coins rolled out on the ground. Thus, the group of fellows chased after them again. Some continued to look down on them, while some continued to envy them. Mang Mang didn't have time to care about them anymore. He continued to speak to the Han family young master, So, the matter has been settled? Basically. The Han family young master said. There's nothing left to clean. What, you still haven't had enough? The Han family young master smiled. It wasn't easy to come all the way here. Mang Mang was mainly thinking for Lan Yi and the others. Then don't go back. Join us. The Han family young master waved his hand. Even his recruitment was so imposing. He directly recruited over 200 people at the same time. He was trying to poach the people, even the leader. In the end, Lan Yi gave him a middle finger in disdain. Fuck, who wants to join you guys? Look at our benefits. Aren't you guys tempted? The Han family young master smiled. Humph. Lan Yi snorted disdainfully and glanced sideways at the playboys. What he meant was, of course, I'm not them. Although the playboys were tempted by the benefits, they didn't join against the heavens for other reasons. They didn't join Very against the heavens precisely because they already saw Very against the heavens as friends that they cared about. What about you? Do you want to join and play? The Han family's young master's question was directed at Mang Mang. He admired this woman quite a bit. Most of the girls in the game were no different from pigs in his eyes. It was rare to see one with a bit of skill. I'll pass. Mang said indifferently. If you want to join, say it at any time. Even if we're full, we can just kick one or two trash and we'll have a spot. The Han family young master pointed to his side, indicating that there was a lot of trash that could be kicked at any time. In the end, there was a coughing sound. The Han family young master turned his head. Coincidentally, the trash he pointed at was actually Gu Fei. This fellow's crazy words were something that an old comrade like Gu Fei had already learned to ignore. At this moment, he said to Brother Yu, Yun Zhongmu, give me the 600,000. I'm going to Moonlit Night City anyway. Why are you going to Moonlit Night City? Brother Yu asked as he took the money. A mission. Gu Fei said. What mission? Many people's eyes flashed. A wanted mission. Gu Fei said. Many people's eyes dimmed again. Brother Yu was puzzled. Do you have to go there for a wanted mission? The dungeon in Cloud City is full. The system won't let me do it. Gu Fei said. What does the system mean? Brother Yu was still puzzled. It means that a GM came and told me not to do the wanted mission in Cloud City. There aren't enough dungeons. If it's full, there will be problems. Gu Fei patiently explained. The players were in an uproar. The workers behind the surveillance screen were also in an uproar. I already said it. I should have told him not to tell anyone else. One person shouted. This is troublesome. How many people are there in front of us? There should be a few hundred, right? Can we keep up with this surveillance? One person was in a panic. The leader quickly gave out instructions. In the system's automatic surveillance, set the words dungeon, wanted, jail, prison as keywords. Pay attention to the feedback. What's wrong with the program? Why hasn't they come up with a solution yet? The monitoring worker complained. In the game, Gu Fei took the 600,000 renminbi and went to Moonlit Night City. He directly met with Cloud Twilight and gave him 600,000 renminbi, saying that it was the other party's apology compensation. Cloud Twilight was worthy of being the leader of 4,000 people. He didn't even bat an eye at the 600,000 renminbi. He only angrily pushed the money back. What's the meaning of this? You're asking money for a friend? There's no such thing. Gu Fei didn't want to waste time on this matter. He stood up and said, everyone has it. How can you miss out on your share? Take it, take it. You don't have much. I'm still busy with the mission. I'll be going first. As soon as Gu Fei finished speaking, he disappeared in a white light. Cloud Twilight didn't know where to chase after him. The money was piled up on the table. Cloud Twilight didn't dare to be negligent. He took it first and thought about it later. Otherwise, the players in the tavern would be staring at this small mountain of money. Cloud Twilight felt that in front of 600,000 renminbi, he, the Lord of Moonlit Night City, was very insignificant. He couldn't guarantee that the other side wouldn't get greedy and attack him. After Gu Fei left, he naturally continued with the wanted missions. However, because they had misgivings about Yun Zhongmu's influence, the missions were all given to them by Yun Zhongmu. It wasn't as grand as Cloud City, where the missions were directly given out a bunch of missions and then issued a bounty based on their coordinates. Naturally, the efficiency was much slower. This allowed the monitoring workers to let out a sigh of relief. Their simulation program told them that if Qinli maintained this efficiency, then Moonlit Night City wouldn't have to face the dungeon crisis. While Gu Fei was busy, the people in Cloud City weren't idle either. Very overpowered. Now that they had freedom of movement, how could the Han family young master not continue to cause trouble while Cloud City was in chaos? As a result, a very overpowered recruitment campaign began fiercely. Brother Yu went to the forums to advertise, while the others put up small advertisements all over the city. Every expert's name was like a golden signboard, and not a single one was left out. The reward of the 6 city districts, which made all the players grit their teeth, was a huge temptation. The advertisement went like this: "Are you still disappointed that you didn't get a reward for failing the city war? Join us, and victory will belong to you." Once the advertisement was released, the number of applicants was like clouds in the sky. In the end, they encountered the most stringent guild recruitment in the history of the game, very overpowered. They actually required players to provide their resumes, very overpowered. All 6 city districts had property gifted by the system. At this time, they chose a place close to the city center as the recruitment office. Countless players crowded here, looking at the resumes of others who had joined the guild. Of course, the resumes were purely from the game. Class, level, specialties, previous guild activity, past gaming experience, and so on. To be able to recruit to this extent meant that it was very overpowered. Right now, it was completely a buyer's market. It wasn't like many small guilds that were begging for people to join. Instead, there was a huge group of people squeezing their way in. At this time, they could only compete with each other, and only those with good qualifications could enter. The war in Cloud City had calmed down a lot, with Unhindered and the other big guilds taking the initiative to call a truce. Of course, Unsworn Sword and the others quickly found out about the very overpowered recruitment and hurried over to take a look. In the end, they saw that the very overpowered registration office was packed with people. Unsworn Sword, Reflection of Years, and Wind Star were standing at the end of the street, and they all felt bad. Unsworn Sword could feel it. Although he had finally defeated Singing Wine and Mu Yun and Black Alliance, he seemed to be even further away from becoming the #1 guild in Cloud City. His biggest competitor was right in front of him, and they were rapidly growing stronger, and there was nothing Unsworn Sword could do about it. He didn't even have the confidence to fight back, because whenever he thought of that person, Unsworn Sword would feel a chill. His informant had already told him how Qinli, led by Mu Yun and Black Alliance, went crazy when he was drunk. No matter how strong Unhindered was, it didn't have the strength of tens of thousands of people. Just Qinli alone could kill them all when he was drunk. Seeing that there were so many obstacles in the way of his dream, Unsworn Sword was extremely depressed. "What do we do?" he asked Reflection of Years. Reflection of Years obviously knew what Unsworn Sword meant by, "What do we do?" He, who had always had his own ideas, also shook his head with a heavy expression. "Are we just going to give up like this?" Unsworn Sword was really unwilling. It wasn't that he didn't realize the potential of this guild, but he didn't expect it to be this big. He also didn't expect Qinli to be this strong when he was drunk. Every time he thought he had seen how strong this guy was, he would always bring out an even stronger performance, causing normal players like them to be at a loss as to what to do. "Let's wait and see." Reflection of Years' mouth was full of bitterness. Who knows how many traitors there will be among these people. Brother Yu looked at the sea of people outside their window and sighed at the Han family young master who was sitting behind a large table with his legs crossed and drinking. In their room, there was only a large table and a large chair. The other furniture was still being purchased. That kind of thing is unavoidable. What's the point of worrying about it? Han family young master drank a small glass of wine with a relaxed expression. What about that nostalgia? Are you really going to let him leave just like that? Brother, you said. Then what do you want? He's an employee of the studio. Killing him is just a waste of time. Han family young master said. That's true. Brother, you said. Let's keep this guy. If there's no news, we might even be able to get something out of him. Han family young master said. You even added him as a friend? Brother Yu was speechless. Someone in the guild added him. I told him to keep it and not to blacklist or delete it. Han family young master said. As the two of them chatted, the door opened with a bang, and a very overpowered player came out, holding a large stack of resumes. He shouted at the top of his lungs, those who have already submitted their resumes, go ahead. We will give you an answer after the inspection, no matter what. Pay attention to your mail. After saying that, he closed the door and embarrassedly carried the stack of resumes to the table in front of Han family young master. With such a heavy push, the table shook and knocked over Han family young master's wine bottle. Han family young master reacted quickly and quickly caught the wine bottle to prevent it from rolling off the table and breaking into pieces. As for the spilled wine on the table, Han family young master grabbed a piece of resume and wiped it away. Brother Yu and the player who just came in were sweating profusely. Two bosses. The guy who just came in didn't care about this matter anymore. Let's change someone else. I really can't handle this job. Just now when I was squeezed outside, my HP actually dropped by 2/3. Can we change to a warrior or something? The warriors have all gone to buy furniture. You can't move those things even if we ask you to. We're short on manpower now. Hold on a little longer. Han family young master said as he finished wiping the table. However, he still picked up the soaked resume and looked at it. He immediately called out to Brother Yu, this is not bad. Oh. Brother Yu walked to the window and looked at the resume. There wasn't much to look into about the level and class. Judging from the resume, one would mostly look at the equipment, experience in the game, and achievements. In order to show off their skills, some people would even talk about their brilliant gaming experience in the remarks. This person in front of them was outstanding just by looking at his equipment. He had played the game for a long time and was a veteran. Brother Yu nodded and said, not bad. However, he heard Han family young master say, it's a pity. What's a pity? Brother Yu was stunned. He didn't find anything wrong with the resume. The name is messed up. Han family young master pointed. The ID of this person was completely washed away by the alcohol. He couldn't tell what his name was. Brother Yu was speechless. The crowd was so enthusiastic that Han family young master didn't care about losing such a good candidate. At this moment, the furniture purchasing team led by Unscathed in Battle had brought back many tables and chairs. However, the street was completely different from when they left. There was a huge crowd and they couldn't get through. After the helpless group contacted young Master Han and the others, they could only move their things to another room and decorate it. On Yutian Shinming's side, the speed promotion team continued to spread recruitment notices all over the city. Their business was already expanding to the leveling areas outside the city. However, according to the gossip of the members of the speed promotion team, they would often post the same street twice. This always happened when Yutian Shinming was leading the way. Meanwhile, the drifting trio had tears streaming down their faces. They used their faction advantage to sneak into the information room. This idea was given by Brother Yu. Brother Yu was very cautious. Although he knew that the guild would inevitably be infiltrated by spies, he still wanted to avoid it. Since drifting had this advantage, they could go and collect the statistics of the high-level players in Cloud City that didn't belong to any guild. These players were very overpowered and they could take the initiative to contact them. At the very least, they wouldn't be spies sent by other guilds. Currently, the guild's true leader, Sword Ghost, wasn't around anyway. Everyone was working together, and if they had any ideas, they would just discuss them and execute them. Most of the 50 people in the guild had already come out. Sword Demon wouldn't be out for at least 2 days. Other than that, Jian Nan Yu and Fire Blazing Clothes were both expert killers. They were still in jail. Elixir Strategist was also in jail. However, he wasn't a very overpowered person and had things to do after he came out. Deepwater and Lu Ku first traveled around Cloud City and wanted to come back to look for these guys. However, the streets were crowded and they couldn't get in at all. When the guild leaders saw this scene, there was no one who wouldn't be jealous. Deepwater was jealous but also excited for Sword Demon. Overpowered is coming back. It's just that the name is a bit disgusting. Very overpowered. It's even more expensive than before. Lu Ku said. But look at this scene. Do you still think it's expensive? Doesn't matter. It's expensive. Lu Ku said. The overpowered guild work was in full swing. Han family young master was happily drinking in the stronghold. However, he would look out the window from time to time and look at the time. It was obvious that he was waiting for something. Finally, he got the news he wanted, nitrite. He was still in contact with Han family young master. He told Han family young master that they were ready and the poaching storm was about to begin. That's pretty fast. Han family young master said. This circle isn't that big. Everyone knows each other. Most of the core members of Ingqi are old people like this, so there's no need to ask around. Most of our time is spent on asking around for some other unknown people. Nitrite said. Very thorough. Han family young master said. We're also forced into a corner. From the start, it means that we're going to fight to the death with Ingqi. We also need to make them lose their combat power in a short period of time. Then we can use the efficient leveling method to quickly occupy the market. By the way, when will 100 Generations of Statecraft be released? I don't know. I'm not familiar with him. You didn't ask him how long he's been in jail. Han family young master asked. PK him at 19 points. That'll take a few more hours. Nitrite said. You're still afraid that he'll run? That's not it. It's just that I'm looking forward to this cooperation. Nitrite said. Butterfly Knot, more than 800 chapters. Officially starting to work hard to establish a guild. Is there such an online game? Chapter 822. Studios were based on the internet and operated in the game, so they were most used to communicating online. Employees usually came from all over the world, so they might not be in the same place. It was one of the specialties of studios to gather and become colleagues through the internet. Although Image was the biggest studio in the industry, it wasn't an exception. They did have core members working in the same place, but there were more colleagues who relied on the internet to communicate. Especially after the parallel world was fully simulated, everyone found a place in the game to close the door and sit down. It was exactly the same as talking face to face. The boss of the studio was very grateful for this great game. After all, face-to-face communication was more convenient for management. However, if he forced everyone to gather together from different places, it would increase his expenses greatly. Now, it was better to have a room in the game, which was cheaper than renting a toilet in an office building. Since the online game entered the era of the parallel world, the boss who had considered further formalizing the studio and working with everyone in a clean and bright environment temporarily gave up on this idea. Anyway, he had always been used to this model, and he continued to carry on. Image Studio was currently having their weekly meeting with the directors of each division. There were a total of 20 people. The company would reimburse the cost of teleportation scrolls. This time, the meeting was held in Moonlit Night City. 5 nights, tell us. Image Studios' base in Moonlit Night City was rather simple. Currently, Moonlit Night City was in chaos. As the host, 5 nights didn't have time to prepare anything, so the elites of Image Studio could only sit on the ground. The only chair was for their boss, but it was too awkward for one person to sit on it, so the boss sat cross-legged on the ground. The one speaking was Image Studios' boss. Of course, he had an account in the game. His ID was very arrogant, Unparalleled Wonder. Unparalleled Wonder used to be an avid gamer, but as he grew older, his interest in the game slowly faded. However, his years of immersion in the game didn't go to waste. He used all of it to create a studio. Image Studio was led by him from a young age. Now that the business was on the right track, Image Studio was like a steady machine, moving forward steadily. Unparalleled Wonder led his team into the parallel world, and everything went smoothly. Their business didn't change because of the game mode. After all, an online game was still an online game. On the other hand, Unparalleled Wonder became interested in the new game mode. Image Studios employees who could communicate with the boss realized that the boss appeared in the game frequently, but they all knew that the boss was playing most of the time. As the boss of the largest studio, Unparalleled Wonder had good equipment. His level wasn't low either, level 42, and he was considered a top player. As for his skill level, the experts in Image Studio only said one sentence after watching the boss play: "Thank goodness he has that equipment." Image Studios' weekly meeting wasn't supposed to be today, but due to the chaos in Moonlit Night City, it was brought forward. Workshops were very happy to see players fighting and killing each other. However, Moonlit City was filled with people yelling for Fancy Workshop's death. This wasn't something that workshops liked. At the end of the day, they were in the service industry, and the players were their customers and God. Now that God was holding a knife and killing them on sight, what else could they hope to sell to them? Unparalleled Wonder wasn't happy about this, but he didn't show it on his face. Instead, he smiled and asked Five Nights to explain the situation. Five Nights was the one who arranged the leveling efficiency, and he knew that the boss was already unhappy with him once. He was smiling, but everyone knew that the boss always smiled to understand the situation, and then smiled evilly to deduct your salary. Five Nights didn't dare to be slow, and told the boss about his plan. He emphasized the importance of confidentiality, and told the people who pulled the strings to not reveal Image Studios' identity. Five Nights didn't understand how the other party still managed to catch them. There's no such thing as an impenetrable wall. How could such a big move not be leaked? The problem is that you have to get it done. Now that it's not done, and we're covered in shit, what do you think we should do? Will we still have business in Moonlit Night City in the future? Unparalleled Wonder didn't discuss with Five Nights how to let people know, he only asked what they should do. If Five Nights didn't think about this, then he wouldn't have been able to climb to the position of director. When he heard the boss ask, he immediately gave the answer he had prepared: "With our status, it's impossible for us to take the initiative to go against them." Nonsense. Unparalleled Wonder said. The studio was here to make money, and harmony was the only way to make money. Therefore, the most important thing now is to spread rumors among the players and guide the players' line of sight. Let them know that the fight with the studio was actually a misunderstanding and that someone framed them. I believe that even now, the majority of the players are still confused as to why Image Studio was suddenly attacked. The earlier we do it, the easier it will be for us to guide the players' opinions. Then, we'll give them a discount and buy their hearts. I believe that the players will eventually soften. After a long time, it will pass. Wu Ye's words were clear and logical. Unparalleled Wonder nodded, he agreed with what Five Nights said. Right now, it was difficult to change the minds of the players, so they could only give them candy and slowly make them forget about it. Since you already have an idea, are you already doing it? Unparalleled Wonder asked. I'm doing it. Our registered players in Moonlit Night City have all been mobilized, and everyone has been given a detailed lesson on how to spread rumors. Five Nights said. Oh, you're doing it quite carefully this time. Unparalleled Wonder said. Five Nights didn't dare make a sound. Getting carried away at a time like this, water must have gone into his brain. However, it's still too late. Just the discount you mentioned will cost us quite a bit, and this can all be avoided. Unparalleled Wonder said. Yes, Yes, yes. 5 Knights nodded. He knew that fiendish smile was coming. Efficient leveling method, monopolizing the city rewards, and failing to do it twice, the losses are immeasurable. It's my responsibility. 5 Knights said. I'll notify the finance department. Unparalleled Wonder was still smiling. Actually, his smile wasn't any different, but every time Image Studio employee heard this, they would treat it as fiendish smile. 5 Knights knew exactly how much he was fined, but Unparalleled Wonder would never say it in front of everyone. The finance department would contact 5 Knights afterwards. 5 Knights sighed. If he really counted the profits from the efficient leveling method and monopolizing the city as losses, then even if he died, it wouldn't be enough to atone for his sins. However, it was business. Of course there were some that could be won, and some that couldn't. Moonlit Night City's discount sales should be a bit more intense. Especially when I came over, I saw that they were killing quite fiercely. The loss of equipment will be quite severe, so let's transfer some equipment to Moonlit Night City. Oh, right, where's the person in charge of Moonlit Night City? Unparalleled Wonder suddenly remembered. Everyone here was a director, and each of them was in charge of several cities. Their subordinates were usually the people in charge of each city. The people in charge of each city didn't attend the meeting, but there was an exception, and that was the main city where the meeting was being held. The person in charge of that city obviously had to come and listen in, serve tea, and arrange for the main city's special food and drinks. If there were any special tourist attractions, they would also go and take a look. Corruption was everywhere. He's still the guild leader of this city in name, and he's also participating in the battle, so it won't be easy for him to leave. 5 Knights explained. It's not that I don't approve of this type of management, but we need to be more cautious and clean. Not only did 5 Knights fail, but he also made himself dirty. This is definitely not good, so everyone needs to learn from this. Unparalleled Wonder took the opportunity to preach. This kind of preaching was sometimes a pleasure for those in power, especially when the people below him nodded in agreement after he finished speaking. It was really delightful. Although it was the same today, Unparalleled Wonder felt that the people in today's meeting were a little absent-minded, especially when he was discussing with 5 Knights. Not a single person interrupted. This was a good opportunity to kick someone when they were down. Unparalleled Wonder also knew that his subordinates couldn't be united like a family. There were many who disliked each other, and there were many who competed with each other. Today, they all listened to 5 Knights' explanation in a friendly manner, and didn't hear a single word of sarcasm. This was really strange. Unparalleled Wonder was a little confused, but he still had to continue the meeting, so he said, "All right, let's end the discussion about Moonlit Night City here. Let's talk about the other cities." Of course, the meeting didn't only talk about Moonlit Night City, but it was the most important thing. In fact, there was another reason why the meeting was held earlier. These few days were the days when the city war ended, and the rewards were distributed. Under the new circumstances, the boss naturally wanted to know what was going on in each city, and what ideas everyone had. After this question was asked, there was silence again. This time, even 5 Knights felt that something was wrong. He glanced at someone. This guy had always been at odds with him. This time, he made a mistake, and was mentioned in the meeting, but this guy didn't even mock him. Moreover, this guy didn't even look at him. Also, the boss was asking questions now. Why didn't the guys who liked to show off and talk first all say anything? They all lowered their heads and stared at their feet. What were they thinking about? Was there a hole in the floor? Unparalleled Wonder was naturally very confused, so he directly called out a person's name. "Wu Yi, what's the situation on your side?" Wu Yi, one of the 3 leaders of Yunting Studio. Wu Yi, who didn't say anything during the discussion of cooperation, was actually one of the 19 directors of Yingqi Studio. Hearing the boss call out her name, 5 Knights immediately looked over. That's right, this girl who liked to show off and talk first, why didn't she say anything today? Wu Ye's expression was a little shy, and after a while, she said, "Boss, I have something to say to you in private." What was this woman trying to do? Seduce the boss. Finally couldn't help but think of this big move. 5 Knights didn't like Wu Yi. First, this woman was too good at performing, and the regular meeting was always her personal speech. Secondly, it was because of Wu Yi and Wu Yi. Because their IDs were homophonous, it was inevitable that they would be teased by other colleagues. In the end, Wu Yi would always get angry at these jokes, as if she was being insulted. This made Wu Yi very upset, and even maliciously guessed that Wu Yi didn't want these ambiguous jokes to affect her seduction skills. Unparalleled Wonder was also surprised by Wu Ye's reaction, and then he thought that she might say something unfavorable to someone in the room. This person shouldn't be 5 Knights. Wu Ye's problem had already been brought out, so there was no need to hide it. Combined with the abnormal situation of others, could it be that something more serious than Moonlit Night City happened in the studio that he didn't know about? Unparalleled Wonder's expression became serious, and he looked at Wu Yi. This is a regular meeting, there is nothing that can't be said. Just say what you want. I want to resign. Wu Yi also opened her mouth. Unrivaled Genius was startled, 5 Knights was startled, everyone was startled, but a look of realization flashed across many people's faces. When they noticed the other people's expressions, they understood a bit more. Unparalleled Wonder frowned. What's the reason? I'm tired, I want to rest. Wu Yi said. Of course, Unparalleled Wonder wouldn't believe this reason. In the last regular meeting, Wu Yi was still cheerfully snatching everyone's topic, and suddenly she was tired in less than a week? What happened? Although our studio isn't like other companies, we still love our employees. If you have any difficulties, just tell us. Unparalleled Wonder's tone became a little more amiable. Wu Yi seemed to have gathered her courage, and said, I want to change the environment. Change the environment? Unparalleled Wonder laughed. Is there a studio with a better environment than ours? Unparalleled Wonder's laugh was a little mocking. At this time, as his own subordinates, they should immediately echo their boss and laugh mockingly. But in the end, only 5 Knights cooperated and laughed. But it was these 2 people's voices that immediately seemed so comical. The silence of the others, on the other hand, became mockery of the 2 of them. Both of them realized something at the same time. You guys, boss, I also want to resign. Finally, someone stood up. Me too. Me too. In less than a minute, 10 out of the 19 directors stood up, and all said the same words, I also resign. Resignation wasn't scary, but the word also was scary, especially when it was said so many times in a row. And from the faces of the remaining people, Unparalleled Wonder saw hesitation. Of course, he immediately understood what was happening. This was definitely a large-scale poaching, and someone was targeting his studio. Everyone, calm down. Let's talk about this slowly. Unparalleled Wonder couldn't sit still anymore, so he quickly stood up. Of course, he knew what it would mean for his studio if all the people here resigned. He was very angry, but he couldn't show it. He had to sincerely persuade them to stay, whether it was to protect his own interests or to settle the score later. What kind of benefits? Unparalleled Wonder knew that anything he said now was useless. To be able to poach people from the biggest studio, he couldn't think of anything else other than better benefits. At the same time, he was very puzzled. The salary that he, Ing Chi, had offered was not considered low. Which studio had the power to poach so many people with better salary? Although they were competitors, as people in the same industry, they were both friends and enemies. Unparalleled Wonder, of course, had added the heads of all the studios as friends. At this moment, he really wanted to send a group message to them and shout, "Who's messing with me?" But what was more difficult to deal with was the situation in front of him. Unparalleled Wonder's words really opened up his subordinates' hearts. Wu Yi, who was usually the most active speaker, suddenly seemed to have returned to his usual vigor. He criticized them for their hard work, unfair treatment, and vicious skimping. Moreover, Wu Yi was very polite today. After saying some things, he gave the opportunity to others. Therefore, the directors began to criticize them one by one, from talking about theories to presenting facts, as if everyone had been wronged like Do-e. Unparalleled Wonder wanted to interrupt several times, but he couldn't stop the other party's surging emotions. Finally, 3 more people stood up, and the number of people who wanted to resign and leave reached 13. The rest continued to fight fiercely in their minds. Among them, only Wu Yi was at a loss. He could see that everyone had been poached, but he wasn't. Why? At this moment, Wu Yi didn't have the mood to speak for his boss. He immediately sent a private message to a director who had a good relationship with him. Which company poached you? Why, you didn't. The director was surprised. He was one of the people who was still hesitating, and he thought that Wu Yi was also hesitating. Who? How did they poach me? Wu Yi asked anxiously. There were emails sent from the in-game mailbox and the offline mailbox. The other party said. I didn't. When? Wu Yi didn't know offline, but the email system would prompt him as soon as he was in the game. He read the system message 800 times, and it was almost last week, but he didn't see it. Just today, not long ago. Wu Yi is really snobbish. Such a big matter was decided in a few hours. I think she's not the only snobbish one. What are the conditions? Wu Yi inquired. Well, it's not convenient to say. Although they had a good relationship, they were colleagues. There was a saying that there were 4 kinds of interpersonal relationships: friends, enemies, strangers, and colleagues. It could be seen that the relationship between colleagues was quite subtle and learned. There were 19 directors here, and 18 people were poached. Why didn't we poach them? Anyone who saw this question would find it strange. Wu Ye's question did not get an answer in the end. And this regular meeting finally became a face-to-face denunciation of the boss and a resignation meeting. However, the poaching operation was still going on, butterfly knot, writing a knot every day and changing it in a different way. It's also killing brain cells. I remember I wrote a diary when I was in elementary school. Tonight I had already gone to bed, but suddenly remembered that I had not written in my diary. I quickly got up to write in my diary, but after thinking about it, there was nothing to write. In the end, I wrote this down. Chapter 823. Unparalleled Wonder was speechless by his subordinates. He never knew that his employees had such a big grudge against the studio. Amidst this powerful crusade, 2 more directors who were hesitant stood up. The number of people asking to resign had reached 15. Of the remaining 4, 3 were still hesitating. Wu Yi was still at a loss and didn't know what to do. Everyone had been dug out except for him. Wu Yi was currently thinking about this problem with all his might. In the industry, Wu Yi didn't think that he was worse than any of the 18 directors in terms of ability and reputation. Why was he excluded? Why was that? After all, this was a dispute in the industry. Wu Yi didn't think that the hatred he had with a very powerful person would have such an impact. Don't worry about Wu Yi. This was what Han family young master had told Yun Teng and the others. Wu Yi took out a letter from his pocket and handed it to Unparalleled Wonder. He said expressionlessly, "This is my resignation letter. I hope you can decide on my successor as soon as possible. I will finish the work within a month. After a month, I need to start a new job. I'm afraid I won't have time." At first, Wu Yi was very timid and wanted to talk to the boss in private. However, after finding a group of comrades, he suddenly became very brave. No one present knew that this incident was actually planned by Wu Ye's Cloud Ting studio. Wu Yi couldn't wait to resign in public at the regular meeting, which was also part of their provocative plan. Wu Yi had worked for Ng Chi Yi for some time. After he had a deep understanding of this industry, he decided to go solo. Later, he established Yun Teng's studio with his 2 friends, Yun Teng and Nitrite Radical, and the business was quite good. In the process, they used a lot of resources from Ng Chi, which was quite unkind. However, the special nature of the studio gave her such an opportunity. It was only a matter of time before she left Ng Chi. Now that she had such an opportunity, she simply made a fuss at the regular meeting. Unparalleled wonder looked at Wu Ye's resignation letter and didn't take it. He looked at the others and said, "What about you? Are you going to do the same?" The others were not as well prepared as Wu Yi. They had just received the poaching letter not too long ago, so they were still hesitating about it. But he didn't have the determination to even write his resignation letter. But at this time, he had already stood up and shed all pretense of cordiality with the boss at the regular meeting. There was no way back, so there was nothing to hesitate about. Some immediately took out a pen and paper to write on the spot, while others directly said, "Anyway, we already know. That's the situation. Let's forget about the resignation letter." Some even gave Gai Shiying a slip of paper with only 3 words on it, "I resign." Gai Shiying was so angry that he trembled. Without another word, Wu Yi saw that Matchless Wonder didn't want to accept her letter, so she put it on the ground, let out a long sigh, and turned to leave. The others also followed suit and left Ingqi Studios' base in Moonlit Night City. There were only 5 people left in the room. 3 of them lowered their heads and didn't speak, their hearts full of worries. Unparalleled Genius could no longer smile, his face was filled with anger. Wu Yi felt like he was squeezed into a crack. He looked here and there, not knowing what to do. After all, Unparalleled Genius was the founder and leader of the largest studio, so he had the ability to take a blow. He quickly calmed down and stared at the last 4 people in front of him. He only said 3 words, "What about you?" The 3 people finally raised their heads, and one of them said, "Boss, I need to think about it. It's better for me to leave first." Then he got up and left the room. The other person quickly said, "Me too." Then he hurriedly left. Out of the 19 directors, only 2 were left. One was Wu Yi, and the other was his good friend. His ID was 9 to 5. 9 to 5 was like Wu Yi, a person with a lot of thoughts. He hesitated until the end, thinking about it in his heart. But he wouldn't be like those 2 idiots and directly tell his boss to think about it. Wouldn't that leave a thorn in his boss's heart? 9 to 5 decided to observe how his boss would respond. At first, he didn't know that the other party would be so aggressive in poaching people. He actually emptied Ingqi. Now, 15 out of 19 directors had left. 2 of them had gone to consider and most likely wouldn't be able to come back. At this time, wouldn't the remaining people also welcome an unprecedented opportunity for development? Therefore, under his boss's gaze, 9 to 5 tried to look as determined as possible. In comparison, Wu Yi seemed a little distracted. 9 to 5 was a little afraid that his boss would ask them to express their stance, so he decided to strike first. "Boss, what should we do?" Before his boss could reply, Wu Yi sent him a private message. "You're not leaving. We'll see." 9 to 5 didn't want to answer this sensitive question directly, but Wu Yi didn't know how to be tactful. He felt helpless. Matchless Hero looked at the 2 of them. He was glad that there were still people he could use. He thought for a moment and said, "I'll leave their work to you 2 for now. 5 nights, leave the matters of Moonlit Night City to the person in charge first. The next step is to find someone to replace them as soon as possible. Do you have any suitable candidates to recommend?" Both of them were silent. These 2 fellows were not easy to deal with. At this time, 9 to 5 was greedy. He didn't care whether he could manage it or not. At this time, there were only him and Wu Yi left. He might as well take charge of 50 cities each. Their income was directly linked to their business. With business in 50 main cities, their status and income would soar. At this time, if he were to take the initiative to find someone to share the food with him, he would of course not cooperate. Wu Yi shook his head and said, "I don't have any suitable people on my side." 9 to 5 snickered in his heart. He guessed that Wu Yi was thinking the same thing as him. Unfortunately, Matchless Hero didn't seem to have the same intention. He immediately said, "Immediately gather all the people in charge and assistants of the main cities. I want to interview them personally and make an exception to promote people from within." 9 to 5 was naturally unhappy, but Wu Yi immediately jumped up. I'll do it. 9 to 5 looked at him in surprise. Matchless Hero nodded and said, online and offline, no matter what you have on hand, immediately gather them. If you don't know their contact information, ask those guys for it. These people in charge of the main cities were the direct subordinates of the directors. Wu Yi naturally had the contact information of the 6 cities, but he might not have the information of the other cities. I understand. Wu Yi nodded and quickly left. 9 to 5 was completely stunned. What was this guy planning? Wu Yi actually didn't have any plans. It was just that the system suddenly notified him that he had a new email. This email made him heave a long sigh of relief. He guessed that this was a headhunting email, but he didn't know why it was only sent to him now. Wu Yi had always felt very uneasy about being isolated. Now that he received the email, of course he couldn't wait to take a look. As for whether he should stay or leave, that was what 9 to 5 said, take a look first. Wu Yi went straight to his mailbox and quickly took out the email. But after reading it, he was dumbfounded. Not only was this email not a headhunting email for him, but it was a resignation letter. The director and assistant of Whitestone City, one of the 6 cities he was in charge of, had jointly sent him a resignation letter. Wu Yi saw that the two of them were online and quickly sent a private message, but it was like a stone thrown into the sea. Wu Yi sent a few more messages, but still no one responded. If the message could be sent, it meant that the friend had not been deleted. But if they were so determined not to reply, it was most likely that they had been blacklisted. The director and assistant of Whitestone City resigned. Did this matter have anything to do with the director's collective resignation? Wu Yi suddenly felt a deep sense of fear. He found that the other party's headhunting operation was far more ferocious than he had imagined. The 2 subordinates of his Whitestone City were not that outstanding compared to the other main cities. If the other party really wanted to headhunt second-rate talents, they wouldn't specifically pick the 2 of them. This was probably the same as headhunting directors, a headhunting method to catch them all. Did the other party want to empty Ying Qi in one go? Wu Yi was stunned, especially since he was completely isolated. What should he do? An empty shell of Ying Qi and him for Wu Yi? Even if the boss completely trusted him and entrusted him, how could he handle such a big business alone? This was not the general direction of the boss. The director had a lot of trivial matters to deal with. It was impossible for one person to deal with 100 main cities. If he couldn't get through this stage, wouldn't Ying Qi be finished? Wu Ye's mind was full of unlucky guesses. He had completely forgotten why he lied to the boss and ran out. He was dazed for a long time before he regained his senses. This was because another message had been sent. Wu Yi quickly opened the message. This time, his guess was completely confirmed. The director of Muyu City, one of the 6 cities he was in charge of, had resigned. Who is it that headhunted you? Wu Yi immediately replied. Silence, silence again. Wu Yi was flustered and exasperated. A bunch of random messages were thrown into the sea. He was blacklisted again. At this moment, 9 to 5 also sent him a message. The situation doesn't seem right. What? Wu Yi understood that 9 to 5 subordinates might have made a move. One of my subordinates just said that he wants to resign. 9 to 5 said. Who is it that is headhunting you? Wu Yi was really anxious. He wanted to know the answer. This answer might explain why he was isolated. Ying Qi had long been thrown out of Wu Ye's mind. At this moment, he was only thinking about his own future. In the end, 9 to 5 still avoided answering. I'm also very curious. Why are you the only one being excluded? Is it an oversight, or did you offend someone recently? 9 to 5 was cunning. He realized that the other party's headhunting was simply a storm. After realizing that Ying Qi was in danger of sinking, he stopped fantasizing about being the director of 50 cities. If all the second-tier members were poached, even if he was the director of 100 cities, he would just be a commander without an army. How could he carry out his work? Who would he show his power to? As the leader of the industry, Ying Qi might not fall just like that. However, he would definitely go through a period of darkness. 9 to 5 didn't want to be in a terrible situation with the unparalleled talent. At this moment, he was a little sympathetic towards Wu Yi. This was because he had a way out. A new job contract with a good salary had already been sent to his email. But what about Wu Yi? It looked like he was thrown alone on a huge ship that was about to collapse. If this guy really offended someone, then the opponent's move was really vicious. I haven't been in contact with any studios recently. Wu Yi replied. It might not be a studio. Maybe it's some influential role. 9 to 5 said. Could it be? Qianli's drunken. Wu Yi could only think of this. He does have some influence among gamers, but he can't interfere with our industry, right? 9 to 5 said. Maybe he has some backing. Wu Yi said. This. 9 to 5 had only heard of Qianli's drunken name. He wasn't afraid of this kind of crazy killer in the game, nor was he interested. Think about his equipment. The Dark Knight Streamer Sword. What the hell was that? It seems like it's not on the same level as the current players. The more Wu Yi thought about it, the more terrified he became. Qianli's drunken was in existence like a bug that had never existed in the history of online games. This guy might really have some backing. His strength might be due to some shady dealings in the game. Just as Wu Yi was thinking about this, a person suddenly dashed past him like the wind. After a few steps, he suddenly stopped, turned around, and looked at Wu Yi. Huh, what a coincidence. Fuck. Wu Yi was dumbfounded. This guy was definitely shady dealings. Otherwise, why would he appear the moment he thought of him? Could it be that the game company was monitoring his thoughts? Wu Ye's high-speed fantasies entered the realm of science fiction. What are you doing? Gu Fei asked as he walked over with his sword. Nothing. Wu Yi actually replied. Seeing that Qianli was obviously going to cut him down, Wu Yi had nowhere to run, so he asked, Are you the one behind the poaching of our studio? In the end, the latter half of the sentence was completed at the revival point. I think he said something. Gu Fei scratched his head. The sword is too fast. I can't control the power of the spell with my own strength. Sigh, I can't hold it back. Gu Fei mumbled as he sent a message to Yun Zhongmu. He told him that he had sent a high-ranking member of England Qi to the revival point and described Wu Ye's class, outfit, and appearance. In a chaotic city, the revival point was always the most crowded place. Of course, the Ten Society Alliance had troops stationed there. Yun Zhongmu's order was quickly sent over, and the people of the Ten Society Alliance immediately started investigating. Soon, they found a suspicious person. It was a guy who was walking out of the revival point with a sad and angry face. A few people quickly went up to him and asked, Is it Wu Yi? Ah. It's me. What's the matter? This was Wu Ye's habitual answer. He was a businessman in the studio, not a fugitive. He never hid his needs. Nothing, I'm just looking for you. After saying this, the other party hacked Wu Yi back to the revival point. Fuck. Wu Yi revived, but he could still see the other party's mocking expression. Although levels were not important to Wu Ye's job, he could still play games to pass the time. Being killed consecutively like this was naturally quite infuriating. However, when he saw the badge on the chest of the people who killed him, he recognized that they were members of the Ten Society Alliance. Wu Yi immediately knew what was going on. Not only did Qianli kill him in a drunken stupor, he even paved a way for him to escape. Wu Yi was dumbfounded. The Ten Society Alliance killed so many people. In fact, they didn't know much about who was in the studio. Now, he was trapped here. How could he still get out? 5 Knights thought of a legendary character, Silvermoon. Silvermoon was the embodiment of the 10 Guild Alliance's patience and persistence towards their enemies. 5 Knights realized that he had replaced Silvermoon's position in the hearts of the 10 Guild Alliance's players. However, the problem was that he did not provoke them at all. It was when he was dealing with them that they begged for nothing. How could 5 Knights explain this to them? Wu Yi couldn't even take a step out of the revival point. His boss, Matchless Wonder, sent a message to urge him. Wu Yi had already given up. He guessed that it was not an oversight that he was abandoned in the midst of the poaching storm. It was most likely the doing of Qianli's drunken stupor. He had no other choice now. He could only hang on with Ying Qi. This way, it would be best to let his boss understand the whole situation as soon as possible and let him make a decision as soon as possible. Hence, Wu Yi quickly explained their situation to Unparalleled Wonder. They, Wonder, were being poached from all directions, and the only blind spot was him, Wu Yi. Matchless Wonder was completely enraged. He didn't expect the other party to be so ruthless. He couldn't control himself anymore and sent a message to the bosses of the other studios. Who's messing with me? Come at me directly. However, the replies were all puzzled. The studios that Matchless Wonder had befriended were all big names. Yunteng was a new studio that Matchless Wonder had yet to befriend. 9 to 5 was bewildered. He looked at Matchless Wonder, who was so angry that he looked like he was going to tear down the house. Matchless Wonder didn't care about 9 to 5. He angrily slammed the door and left. Boss. Wu Yi suddenly froze. He didn't expect his boss to appear in front of him in an instant. Fuck. Matchless Wonder was going crazy. He had wanted to go out with a belly full of anger. However, he was ambushed the moment he stepped out. He didn't even see who it was before he was killed. This wasn't strange. Who asked them to have Wu Yi? Of course, Wu Yi didn't have the intention to kill him. However, when the situation turned to Han family young master, it was naturally a different story. With Han family young master's remote command, when Yun Zhongmu heard that he could even kill Ying Qi's big boss, he excitedly led his team over. What was depressing was that he didn't even get to touch his sword before he was attacked by his subordinates' long-range attacks. Everyone could see that this guy's equipment was really luxurious. It was the happiest to get some equipment during a battle. Chapter 824. Heaven's Wonder and 5 Knights had the same class. They were both archers. Because they were here to earn money, time was money. Naturally, they chose this class that had the fastest movement speed. This way, they wouldn't have to waste a lot of time on traveling. At this time, the two of them were gathered at the archer shooting range in Moonlit Night City. This resurrection point immediately became the most crowded place. After Yun Zhongmu gave the order, there was a lot of commotion. Some people heard that the higher-ups of Fancy Workshop had been captured, and were already stretching their necks to ask, which one? At this time, there was new news that the big boss of Fancy Workshop had also been captured. Thus, the crowd became even more excited, and the which one voices became even louder. The revival point was safe, and they could enter without any worries to look at these two animals. At this time, more and more people gathered at the archer shooting range. Everyone looked around. Someone pointed out 5 Knights, and he quickly attracted a lot of attention. No one knew Heaven's Wonder Workshop yet, but it was obvious that he was beside 5 Knights. Everyone immediately knew who he was, so they looked and appraised him, leaving behind a series of praises. Ah, his equipment is not bad. As expected of the big boss. Yeah, look at that bow. Enhanced snipe and double arrow. I've never seen a weapon that can be enhanced with 2 skills. Have you seen his hat before? Enhanced eagle eye. Have you seen a hat with enhanced skills? Damn, his clothes are light armor. Its defense is even higher than my heavy armor. His shoes are fast too. The necklace adds so much agility. Ring adds marksmanship mastery. Heaven's Wonder Workshop was surrounded and appraised by the crowd. One by one, his equipment was taken down by the crowd. If it wasn't for the protection of the resurrection point, there was no guarantee that these people wouldn't lose their minds and rush over to take his equipment. The people around the two of them were amazed. Someone outside the circle shouted, "It's our turn, it's our turn. Let's take a look too." Guy Shurying and 5 knights were extremely depressed. They were like monkeys in a zoo, and Guy Shurying was especially so. Compared to 5 knights, who was a high-level executive, he was more attractive as a big boss, especially with his equipment. It was a pleasure to have equipment that attracted people's attention, but would Heaven's Wonder Workshop be in the mood for that? In order to avoid the harassment, he took off his equipment and put it in his pocket. He then put on some ragged clothes and asked, "Where's your guild leader? I want to see him." Seeing Monkey speak, the players quieted down. Then, someone walked out from the crowd and stood in front of Heaven's Wonder Workshop. "What do you have to say?" Heaven's Wonder Workshop controlled his emotions and tried to be as sincere as he could. "If there's anything, we can sit down and talk." The person laughed out loud, looking very flashy. "You don't have to sit down. Give me 80,000 or 100,000 yuan, and I can consider letting you out of this resurrection point." The players cheered. Most of the players didn't have a good impression of the gaming studios amassing money in the game, especially from the players. Now that there was a chance to amass money from the gaming studios, everyone was excited. To everyone's surprise, Matchless Genius nodded and said calmly, "We can sit down and talk. Anything is negotiable." The newcomer was obviously very surprised. He scratched his head awkwardly amidst the laughter around him, as if he didn't know how to respond. On the other hand, 5 knights had long felt that something was amiss. The boss of the 10 Guild Alliance, Yun Zhongmu, was a thief. At the very least, everyone knew about this. However, the person in front of him was clearly a warrior. Even though the boss of the 10 Guild Alliance was high and mighty, he still frequently played games for fun. The 10 Guild Alliance was so famous, and Yun Zhongmu was a character that was ranked in the top 5. There was no way that he wouldn't know, right? The guy in front of them was obviously pretending to be ignorant and making fun of them. 5 Knights was hesitating about whether he should warn his boss, but Unparalleled Wonder smiled and said, "Can't you make the decision? Can you let me see someone who can make decisions?" Only then did Wu Yi come to a realization. As expected of the boss, he was able to keep his composure. He clearly knew that the guy in front of him was a fool, but he still patiently dealt with him. Amidst the laughter of the surrounding players, someone started to mock him, "Zhu Xian, you're still far from being the boss. Hurry up and come down." Zhu Xian was quite thick-skinned. He turned around and laughed, "Why am I not the boss? Am I not the guild leader? This guy just asked, your guild leader. Fuck, am I not the guild leader?" The 10 Guild Alliance was formed by 10 guilds. Zhu Xian was indeed the guild leader of one of the 10 guilds. Of course, it was true that he was the guild leader. However, in the concept of the 10 Guild Alliance, they were all one guild. The system's classification was not valid. Zhu Xian's use of this as an excuse was seen as shameless by everyone. From this, it could be seen that Zhu Xian, the so-called guild leader, had no weight at all. If it wasn't for the system's rule that every guild must have a guild leader, he probably wouldn't even have this title. Amidst the quarrel between the brothers, Unparalleled Wonder and 5 Knights seemed to be intentionally or unintentionally ignored. Unparalleled Wonder continued to remain calm and patiently waited for these people to finish quarreling. He continued to look at Zhu Xian, the guild leader, with a questioning gaze. Zhu Xian didn't expect his negotiation opponent to be so calm and difficult to deal with. He felt like he couldn't handle it anymore. He cursed himself for coming out to steal the limelight. He could only hope that boss Yun Zhongmu would come over quickly. Unparalleled Wonder saw that the other party didn't speak, but he wasn't in a hurry. At least the situation of being watched like a monkey had stopped. After a few words, although he and 5 Knights were just 2 people with little power, they seemed to be on equal footing with the other party's people. One had to say that this was the aura. A leader like Unparalleled Wonder had quite the aura. The sightseeing for the 2 of them had stopped, but the archer shooting range and the battle royale in Moonlit Night City still had to continue. Just in time for the enemy to organize a wave of people to attack the archer shooting range, the 10 Meetings Alliance players who were watching the 2 of them hurriedly turned around to counterattack. However, they still carefully left a few people to keep an eye on Unparalleled Wonder and 5 Knights. Unparalleled Wonder didn't speak, and 5 Knights didn't know what his boss was planning. He didn't have any other way out, so he could only quietly stand guard at the side. When he was blocked here, Wu Yi had thought of quickly calling for the arrogant emperor and Wei to quickly organize people to rescue him. However, he immediately thought that the 2 brats, the arrogant emperor and Weed, had definitely been dug up by the other party. It was hard to say if they would still do their best, so he gave up on this idea. In the end, Proud Emperor and Weed sent a message to inform 5 Knights that they also wanted to resign. These 2 people were originally leading the guild to fight against Yun Zhongmu. There was a new email in their mailbox, but the 2 of them didn't have the time to read it. Later on, a colleague who was on good terms with them asked about this, so the 2 of them hurriedly ran to take a look at the email. They were the last 2 people in the entire Eagle Alliance to find out about the poaching email. Of course, the 2 of them also hesitated, but very quickly, a new battle report came. 5 Knights and even their boss were blocked at the revival point by the 10 Guilds Alliance. The 2 of them immediately felt that the Eagle Workshop was in big trouble this time, and the other party's generous offer was right in front of them. From the moment they received the poaching email to the moment they made the decision, these 2 could be said to be the fastest. After casually calling 5 Knights, the 2 of them immediately left the guild without saying a word. The 2 of them had already become a source of trouble in Moonlit Night City. The 2 of them believed that their new master would definitely not be interested in taking in these troublemakers, so they made a prompt decision to leave the guild and blacklist all the members of their original guild. Then, they went to their new master alone. The 2 leaders of the 2 guilds that were fighting against the 10 Guilds Alliance suddenly left the guild. This was too heavy a bomb. Just a few minutes ago, the 2 of them were still in a tug-of-war at the revival point. Why did they suddenly leave the guild without saying a word? The 2 guilds were in chaos. They were already powerless in the fight against the 10 Guilds Alliance, and now that even their leaders had left, the morale of their troops was naturally in chaos. In a short period of time, there were many players who left the guild. The originally 2 level 5 guilds were on the verge of disbanding in an instant. Some people were originally fighting on the battlefield, but in the next second, they suddenly left the guild without looking back, making the 10 Guilds Alliance a little confused. Something suddenly happened to the other party, and this was too obvious on the scene. Many people suddenly began to run away. With the 2 leading guilds being so disorganized, the remaining allied guilds were also quickly affected. Moreover, without the support of these 2 guilds, they were even less of a match for the 10 Guilds Alliance. Some left, some gave in, and some gave in. Along the way from Eagle Workshop's encampment to the Archer shooting range, Cloud Twilight continuously received the good news of victory. When he arrived at the Archer shooting range, the chaotic battle in Moonlit Night City was almost over. Those who were still fighting were the ones who were not well informed. They still didn't know that the 2 leading guilds had already fallen. Everyone's allies were already terrified, and were still shouting, "Down with the 10 Guilds Alliance." The impact on the Archer shooting range was naturally easily defeated. Zhu Xian led everyone back, and just happened to see Cloud Twilight's group coming over. He immediately went over and told him that the boss of Eagle Workshop wanted to have a good chat with them. Cloud Twilight coldly laughed and stepped into the revival point. When the 10 Guilds Alliance players saw that their boss had arrived, they all made way. Cloud Twilight also walked in front of Matchless Genius. Matchless Genius had a smile on his face. "Looks like this is the famous boss Cloud Twilight." "Don't give me that." Cloud Twilight waved his hand. "If you have something to say, just say it." Matchless Genius didn't get angry, and continued, "Isn't this a bit of a misunderstanding?" "Misunderstanding? What kind of misunderstanding?" Cloud Twilight asked. "There shouldn't be any conflict between us." "You're saying that we're looking for trouble?" Cloud Twilight said. "You can't say that." "Of course there is, but it's a misunderstanding." "What misunderstanding?" "The ambush on Black Dragon Mountain Range, weren't you guys behind it?" Cloud Twilight said. "I've already asked about it." It's true that we did it, but we weren't targeting the brothers of the 10 Guilds Alliance. Of course, in the end, we still caused you guys some losses, and we have to compensate for that. Matchless Genius said. Humph. Cloud Twilight coldly laughed. Of course I know who you guys are targeting. Qianli Drunk is a good friend of our 10 Guilds Alliance. Targeting him is the same as targeting us. You want to bribe us with money? Keep dreaming. Cloud Twilight was so hot-blooded, and didn't care about benefits at all. This made Matchless Genius speechless, and he could only helplessly say, so you're saying that there's no way for us to talk anymore? Absolutely not. Cloud Twilight resolutely said, just try to find a way to get out of this door. Then you're underestimating me. Leaving here is too easy. Matchless Genius laughed, and took out a teleportation scroll from his pocket. This made Cloud Twilight speechless. He couldn't stop him at the revival point. Matchless Genius used the scroll, and the two of them immediately disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Why didn't you leave? After escaping from the teleportation, Matchless Genius unexpectedly asked Five Nights this question. At this moment, Five Nights felt that his loyalty to the studio was too fake, and so he told the truth, I had nowhere to go. Oh. Matchless Genius didn't understand. They didn't look for me this time. Five Nights said. Why is that? Matchless Genius was also confused. Five Nights shouldn't be so bad that no one wanted him. I suspect that this operation was caused by Qianli Drunk's group. From the leveling efficiency to the city rewards, I've met them twice, and I've offended them on both occasions. It's probably their revenge. Five Nights said. So you're saying that it's because of your actions that they've attacked us as a whole? Matchless Genius said. Five Nights was startled, and only now did he realize how much responsibility he had. How many of the people in charge of each city resigned? Matchless Genius knew that this wasn't the time to pursue this matter. Moreover, even he didn't think that a player could make such a big move. It was normal that Five Nights didn't think of the consequences, and there really wasn't anything to be punished for. I'm not sure about the other regions, but my people have already resigned from 3 cities. Five Nights said. You have 6 cities under you, right? Five Nights nodded. Most of the people in charge of the main cities aren't bound by any formal contracts. They can leave whenever they want, and it's even possible for them to leave without saying a word. How many do you think will be left? Matchless Genius said. I don't know. Five Nights said. These people are an important link in our studio. To be honest, taking them all away is even more serious than you directors being poached. Their loss has caused problems in our communication. Hurry up and contact the other directors, and tell them that we're going to do an inventory. As long as we have the goods, we don't need to panic. England won't fall that easily. But after these people leave, we can't use the game warehouse that's in their hands. We still have to move the goods, and we can't contact any reliable people right now. Five Nights said. Let the directors of each city be in charge of this. You just need to do the inventory, and then try to get in touch with the temporary workers at the bottom, and let them directly report to you. Matchless Genius said. I understand. Five Nights nodded. The higher the positions of the directors, the more restrictions they had. They all had a labor contract with the studio, so even if other directors announced their resignation, they had to spend a month to complete the handover. Moreover, a large amount of the goods in their hands were the assets of the studio, and if they dared to embezzle it, they would have to bear legal responsibility. But the employees below the director level were different. Most of them didn't have a formal contract, and many of them were promoted from temporary workers. They relied on their personal constraints and the supervision of the directors, and when it came to resignation, they couldn't do anything about it. But they didn't have to worry too much about taking the goods and leaving. Because they knew the situation of these people, the resources of the studio were always in the hands of the directors, and only the directors had the authority to use the system warehouse rented in each city. Unrivaled Genius's arrangement gave Wu Ye's confidence back. That's right, it was troublesome if the people left, but it wasn't to the point of collapse. They couldn't take the game's goods and gold coins that the studio had accumulated for a long time, and they didn't have enough manpower at the moment. But even if there were a few people who specialized in these goods, it would be enough to support the reputation of the studio for a period of time, and they could slowly recruit more people in the future. And now, he, Five Nights, was about to take over all the goods of the studio. How much trust was this? It seemed that he had profited from a disaster, and his career was about to usher in another breakthrough. Five Nights, who had regained his confidence, happily went to contact the other directors. Many of these directors fell out with Matchless Genius, and although it was quite awkward, they knew that these were their responsibilities according to the contract. They also wanted to get out of this as soon as possible, so they didn't refuse, and asked when the inventory would start, and where the goods would be transferred to. Five Nights was startled, and hurriedly asked the boss for this question. You arrange the time, I'll mail the inventory list of each city to you later, and where to transfer it. I'll find someone to open a new warehouse, and when the time comes, I'll go with you, and you can transfer the goods with him. Five Nights was startled, not because of the boss's arrangement, but because he didn't think that the boss would have someone trustworthy. He thought that at this time, Matchless Genius was only left with him and the boss, the two commanders. All right, you can go now. Matchless Genius said. What about you, boss? Me? I have to take care of the matters of Moonlit Night City. Matchless Genius said. What do you mean? I don't understand. With that Yun Zhongmu and the 10 Meetings Alliance, how can we get involved in the business of Moonlit Night City in the future? And with such a group of people causing adverse effects, it will always be a hidden danger to our studio. More importantly, I won't let them ride on my head so easily. Don't the 10 Meetings Alliance like to fight and kill? Alright, I'll play with them. Matchless Genius's tone suddenly became extremely cold. In layman's terms, at this moment, Matchless Genius's aura was overflowing. Five Nights was startled. Chapter 825. There was no doubt that the boss's gaming skills weren't that good. The strength increased by the equipment was enough to deal with some noobs and give him the upper hand in a one-on-one fight with some experts. However, it was impossible for him to kill tens of thousands of people single-handedly like 1,000 miles drunk and exhaust them mentally. However, Matchless Wonder dared to challenge him so confidently. Five Nights began to suspect that the boss actually had a hidden force. This group of people was probably mainly fighting. Five Nights and the others mainly worked in the game and didn't have much time for entertainment. However, Matchless Wonder was different. The studio was on the right track, and he only needed to deal with things regularly. He had more free time. However, even though he had more free time, the boss of a successful studio wouldn't wholeheartedly use the game for entertainment. He didn't have much time to play the game every day. Even so, Matchless Wonder's level wasn't low. Level 42 shouldn't be something that a player who played at most 2 to 3 hours a day could achieve. However, Matchless Wonder was just like that. Although most people attributed this to Matchless Wonder's good equipment, there were many people in the game who had good equipment. It wasn't that Matchless Wonder and the others didn't doubt that equipment alone could achieve this. However, after all, these things had nothing to do with their work, so they just chatted casually. In fact, mocking the boss's gaming skills was what they did most of the time. Gossiping about the boss together was an activity that all the workers loved to see. At this moment, when Five Nights saw the boss so confidently saying that he was going to fight against the 10 Guilds Alliance, he suddenly had such a thought: there were people behind the boss. The boss could level up so efficiently because there was such a group of experts leading him. Five Nights and the others didn't know about this group of people. At this moment, it seemed that the boss was going to use this group of people. Since the boss had never mentioned these people to them, of course, Five Nights didn't ask more. At this time, Matchless Wonder sent him to do something, so Five Nights could only leave with a stomach full of curiosity. In Moonlit Night City, although Matchless Wonder and Five Nights' teleportation scroll made Cloud Twilight and the others feel regretful, this battle was still considered a complete victory for the 10 Guilds Alliance. The big boss of the studio was beaten so badly by them, which was quite exciting. Everyone in the guild was cheering and going to celebrate. As for the celebration, it was nothing more than drinking. Cloud Twilight strongly invited Gu Fei to come. Of course, Gu Fei wasn't interested in drinking and partying. However, Yun Zhongmu had been very kind to them this time, so Gu Fei didn't want to embarrass him too much. Thus, he went to the tavern and showed his face, letting the heroes of the 10 Meetings Alliance see the true face of the #1 assassin. After casually chatting with Yun Zhongmu and the other familiar faces, Gu Fei used the excuse of completing a quest as an excuse to continue his wanted quest. The celebration of the 10 Societies Alliance was in full swing. A tavern could not hold all of them, so they drank from the tavern to the street, and from the street to the square. Many players from guilds that were on good terms with the 10 Guilds Alliance also came to join in the fun. Previously, the city was filled with PvP battles, but in the blink of an eye, it was like a celebration. The players of Moonlit City were just that straightforward. As the boss of the guild, Cloud Twilight was naturally the target of everyone's drinking. Getting drunk in the game didn't harm the body anyway, so it was quite realistic to simulate the state of being drunk. Cloud Twilight's alcohol tolerance was average. After a few rounds, he couldn't hold on anymore. He drank until he saw stars, but there was still an endless stream of people who wanted to continue drinking him. Cloud Twilight relied on his speed as a thief, so he used swift steps and began to run away. After getting drunk, Yun Zhongmu's feet were unsteady. Yun Zhongmu's swaying footsteps drew a string of roars of laughter. Yun Zhongmu didn't know either. He ran all the way to an empty alleyway. When he saw that no one was chasing him, he took a deep breath. These bastards messed with me like this. I can't hang around with them anymore. Cloud Twilight felt dizzy. Getting drunk in the game was also very uncomfortable. I wonder if I'll be fine when I go offline and log back in. With this thought, Cloud Twilight wanted to go to the revival point and try. However, when he turned around, he saw 2 masked assassins standing at the entrance of the alley, looking at him. "Are you the boss of the 10 Guilds Alliance?" asked the masked assassin. "That's me." "Who are you guys?" Cloud Twilight replied indifferently. At this moment, his brain wasn't working. "Our boss told us to send you his regards," said the masked assassin. When Cloud Twilight heard this, he faintly felt that something wasn't right. He sobered up a bit and said in a daze, "Who's your boss?" "Unrivaled genius." After saying this, the 2 masked assassins suddenly moved, using swift steps. Cloud Twilight was also a thief turned assassin, so he could naturally see that these 2 were very skilled. They split up and launched a pincer attack at him from both sides. Cloud Twilight wasn't an easy character to deal with, but in his current state of drunkenness, he couldn't even walk steadily. He wanted to move forward, but his legs swayed and he fell right in front of the other party's sword. This assassin was quite ferocious. The flying dagger slashed towards Cloud Twilight's neck. Cloud Twilight had no time to react. He only felt his health drop by a large chunk. This assassin's attack power wasn't low. Attack power was a reflection of equipment. The guy in front of him had good equipment and outstanding skills. One of these characters was already very difficult to deal with, let alone 2. What's more, Cloud Twilight couldn't even stand steadily. His dodging and counterattacking were all a mess. He knew that he was in big trouble, but he was powerless. In the end, he turned into a ball of white light. After dying and reviving, Cloud Twilight's drunkenness was completely cleared. However, this method of sobering up was a bit too extravagant. Yun Zhongmu was naturally furious. He didn't even know what kind of person this peerless genius was, and yet he was killed for no reason. After Cloud Morning announced that he had been plotted against in the guild channel, he was unexpectedly met with a wave of laughter. Everyone laughed at Cloud Morning's drunken joke, saying that it was very tasteless, very lacking in skill, and very brainless. Cloud Twilight didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He solemnly repeated his words several times, but the guild members were all in a half-drunk, half-sober state. They didn't believe him no matter what. Eventually, there was a sober and attentive person who discovered that Cloud Twilight's level on the guild list had dropped by a level. Only then did everyone believe him. They began to ask who did it. Unrivaled genius? Who is this? After asking, everyone was at a loss. The players didn't know what the ID of the boss of Image Workshop was. The reason why they were able to ambush Unrivaled Genius was because they had obtained the information from others. Even though they didn't know who Unrivaled Genius was, Cloud Twilight knew who the guild had offended the most. With his clear-headed mind, he quickly realized that this might be the punishment that Ink Studio was trying to use force against him. Cloud Twilight looked down on the people from the Image Workshop from the bottom of his heart. Those people only knew how to amass money. Did they understand the joy of the game? Those two assassins seemed to have good skills and equipment. They were most likely fugitives hired by Image Workshop. If they wanted to use such a method to scare him, they were looking down on him too much. Cloud Twilight was very heroic. He guessed that since the other party wanted to take revenge on him, there might be people lying in wait outside the Thief Union. Cloud Twilight didn't dodge. He directly stepped out of the revival point and cursed, "Where's the grandson that wants to ambush me? Get the hell out here. Behind you." Cloud Twilight only heard a sinister voice from behind him. Following that, someone pushed him. Cloud Twilight fell forward and immediately took a few steps away from the revival point. The experienced Cloud Twilight didn't immediately turn around to look. Instead, he immediately dodged. He rolled on the ground, only to see flames, arrows, swords, and everything else flying towards him. None of them seemed weak. Cloud Twilight dodged in time, but he was still injured. Just by looking at this wave of attacks, he could tell that the other party's coordination was very good. It was clear that they were often together. This assassin team that Image Workshop had hired was actually quite difficult to deal with. As Cloud Twilight thought about this, the other party's second wave of attacks arrived. A few mages blasted out AoE spells. They didn't directly attack Cloud Twilight, but rather restricted his movements. Taking advantage of the gaps between the spells, the other party's melee professions had already rushed in. In the blink of an eye, Cloud Twilight was completely surrounded. They're not ordinary experts. Cloud Twilight was shocked. This coordination was extremely experienced. Their control over their skills was also extremely high. Cloud Twilight, who had fought in hundreds of battles, couldn't dodge. In the blink of an eye, he died again. Cloud Twilight, who had died a second time, was surprisingly calm. The opponent wasn't simple. They attacked decisively and killed in one hit. Cloud Twilight quietly thought about the first time he died. If he hadn't been drunk at the time, would he have been able to stop those two assassins from attacking him? Those two people, either one of them was no weaker than him. If the two of them worked together, Cloud Twilight felt that he definitely wouldn't be able to defeat them. Whether or not he could escape would depend on whose equipment and movement speed was faster. Cloud Twilight hurriedly rushed to the revival point's entrance. This time, he didn't dare to casually step out. The assassins weren't in a hurry to leave either. They didn't even wear masks. They calmly revealed their true faces. Seeing Cloud Twilight rush to the entrance, one of the other party's members smiled. "You better be careful. We haven't finished greeting you yet." After saying this, he actually led the others away. He completely ignored Cloud Twilight's roar of, "Who are you?" Cloud Twilight was sullen. He wanted to rush out and fight to the death with these people, but he knew that he was alone. There was no way he could be a match for such a well-coordinated team. Cloud Twilight counted the number of people on the other side. There were a total of 9 people surrounding him. 4 mages, 2 assassins, 1 grandmaster of combat, 1 warrior, and 1 knight. This was clearly an irregular team with extremely high attack power. They didn't even bring a cleric, which was a necessity for a team. This made Cloud Twilight even more furious. This meant that the other side had complete confidence in Cloud Twilight. They believed that they wouldn't suffer any damage. Of course, there was no need to bring a cleric. At this time, they seemed to know that Cloud Twilight wouldn't rush out of the revival point. They might as well just leave. But when would this group of people appear again? Cloud Twilight obviously didn't know. He suddenly felt a chill in his heart. He realized that he was already a prey that had been targeted. What should he do in the future? Of course, he wouldn't be able to withstand this group's sneak attack alone. Bring a team. The other side had already formed a team. Even if he formed a small team, with the same number of people, Cloud Twilight felt that it would still be difficult. Would he have to go out with dozens of people in the future? How could that be possible? Cloud Twilight stayed in the revival point in pain until many of his brothers from the 10 Guilds Alliance rushed over. Cloud Twilight had already lost 2 levels. He had suffered heavy losses. A group of people had already started cursing on Cloud Twilight's behalf. However, Cloud Twilight's expression was solemn. He didn't know anything about this group of people. He didn't know how to deal with them. Today, they had ambushed him. What about tomorrow? Would they attack the other members of the 10 Guilds Alliance? If the other side had the patience to continue like this, it would be very scary. Outside Moonlit Night City, Matchless Genius was casually killing monsters to level up. A group of people came from the direction of the main city and finally arrived in front of Matchless Genius. The group included the 2 assassins who had killed Cloud Twilight and the 9 people who had been waiting outside the revival point. However, there were a total of 24 people. You're here. Matchless Genius saw the group and said while killing monsters. Yes. The one who replied to Matchless Genius was a knight. As he replied, he gestured to the other players. The group immediately spread out and hunted monsters. However, every time a monster had 1 hit left, they would lure it to Matchless Genius. Matchless Genius was very used to killing these monsters one by one. 5 Knights' guess was basically correct. Matchless Genius really did have a group of people who played the game with him. He was also a money warrior, but he was different from Slender Waist Dance. Slender Waist Dance was an extremely personal hero. She spent all of her money on equipping herself. Her desire for the game was the same as most normal players. She wanted to become a super invincible tyrant who could destroy a main city with a single stretch of her back and a stomp of her foot. She wanted to be a super invincible tyrant who could destroy a main city. Matchless Genius, on the other hand, had a group of people who served him. When he was leveling up, they would bring the monsters that were on the verge of death to him so that he could efficiently gain experience. When he was doing quests, there would be people who would scout ahead for him and choose the most valuable quests. His subordinates would also arrange everything for him to do along the way. It was through this method that Matchless Hero could level up at such an extraordinary speed. His own gaming skills, however, were not that great. However, Matchless Genius didn't care about this. Whenever he caused trouble in the game, he would naturally send his subordinates to clean up the mess. This was their job. Matchless Genius provided them with a place to play the game and gave them a monthly salary. Their job was to serve Matchless Genius in the game. 5 Knights and the others were earning money for Matchless Genius. These people could be considered as Matchless Genius's customers. In return, they mainly rewarded Matchless Genius with spiritual enjoyment. In fact, these people were quite famous. If Yun Zhongmu knew their IDs, he would realize that they were all at the top of the level leaderboards. This was also a genuine elite group. In the game's southeast region, it was easy to find out the name of their mercenary group, Eagle Group. On the way here, we killed Yun Zhongmu twice. The knight reported to Matchless Genius while commanding the others to help the boss lure monsters. Good job, Everlasting. Matchless Genius said. If Yun Zhongmu heard this name, even if he didn't know who it was, he would definitely recognize it. The Parallel World's #1 knight, Everlasting. After the city war, even the 5 roaches on the leaderboards were reshuffled. However, Everlasting's position didn't change. He was just like his ID. Ever since he became number 1 on the night leaderboards, he never gave any other knights a chance. Of course, for the players in Cloud City's moonlit night city, these were all unfamiliar experts. Moreover, the most terrifying expert in the game, Qinli, would appear whenever he was drunk. In front of him, the glory of any expert would seem insignificant. Everlasting only smiled at the boss's praise and continued to ask, "Are there any other targets?" "For now, let's choose Yun Zhongmu as our main target," Matchless Genius said. "How many should we kill?" "The lower the better," Matchless Genius said. "Understood." Everlasting wasn't surprised. This wasn't the first time they had killed someone to level 10. Matchless Hero looked at the players who had spread out to aggro the monsters. "Not everyone's here yet?" he asked after a quick count. "Yeah, there are 6 people in the third group who are sleeping right now. I've already told them to clean up and they'll be here soon," Everlasting said. Their Eagle group had a total of 30 people. They were split into 3 groups, and each group had to play for 8 hours a day. The 3 groups rotated, ensuring that Matchless Genius would have people around 24 hours a day. Matchless Genius didn't play for a fixed amount of time each day. Some were long, some were short, and some were absent. The members of the Eagle group were actually quite free most of the time. However, to them, the game wasn't just their job, it was also their fun. They were different from Five Nights and the other employees. They were more like Southbound Sword's group of 7, but they were a group of professional players with a fixed boss, while Southbound Sword's group were freelance workers. "Yeah, killing Yun Zhongmu seems pretty easy for you guys, but you still have to be careful of one person," Matchless Genius said. "Are you talking about Qinli's drunk?" Everlasting asked. "That's right, it's him. This battle will most likely involve him as well," Matchless Genius said. "If this person is involved, then there might be other people involved as well. It feels like a gathering of old friends." Everlasting suddenly laughed. Chapter 826. Yun Zhongmu was very, very anxious. Together with a large group of brothers, he finally left the resurrection point, but he was a little nervous along the way. How many people were there? Were the 10 or so people that came out one after the other their full strength? Or was it another big guild with thousands of people? Yun Zhongmu asked his brothers if they saw any unfamiliar faces, but they were all very confused. They saw unfamiliar faces every day. The game's main city wasn't as big as a city in real life, but the population had grown to hundreds of thousands. Anyone who could remember the familiar faces of hundreds of thousands of people was too powerful. Therefore, Yun Zhongmu's question didn't fit the current trend of the game. This kind of opponent was the most annoying. Yun Zhongmu didn't even know if the opponent was watching his movements in the dark or waiting for an opening to attack. Moreover, the opponent might not only be watching him, but also many people in the guild. Therefore, Yun Zhongmu seriously announced in the guild that they had to be careful in the next few days. It was best to move as a group and not leave the revival point without 30 to 50 people. The people from the 10 Societies Alliance were in an uproar. Zhu Xian took the lead and shouted, "Where did these bastards come from? If I find out, I'll kill them with my axe." "You idiot, shut up." Yun Zhongmu didn't even have the mood to scold Zhu Xian. He continued to explain the situation seriously. "It's scary not knowing the opponent's background. But I'm sure that the 11 people I've met so far are all top experts." Zhu Xian said happily, "Old Yun. Don't say that they're top experts just because you got killed twice. It's not embarrassing to be killed by 9 people. As for the 2 of them, you drank too much. It was an accident." "Zhu Xian, you bastard. If you keep talking nonsense, I'll kill you immediately." Yun Zhongmu was furious at Zhu Xian's words. Zhu Xian realized that Yun Zhongmu was serious and wasn't trying to get back at him. He quickly shut his mouth. At this time, the serious people started to express their opinions. So many top experts? How can there be so many experts in the game? Does this mean that these people are from the outer city? That should be the case. It's impossible for there to be hidden experts in Moonlit Night City that we don't know about. This group of people must be from the outer city, but we don't know where to start investigating. In short, everyone must be on guard. The 10 Society Alliance had just won a great victory and their morale was high, but in the blink of an eye, they had fallen to the bottom again. Yun Zhongmu also felt very uncomfortable. The other party was an elite team, so using elites to deal with elites was the best method. However, even though the 10 Guild Alliance was large, Cloud Twilight felt that the quality of their elite experts couldn't compare to this group of people who had ambushed them. And the most elite team he knew was obviously Qianli's group of people. However, Yun Zhongmu was someone who cared about his reputation. Currently, he led the 10 Guilds Alliance and was known as the strongest guild in the parallel world. Yet, he still had to seek help from others for a problem that he could not handle. Just as he was hesitating over this matter, Qianli's drunk went dark in his friend list. This was a sign that he had gone offline. Many things had happened today. Gu Fei had been online for countless hours. It was comparable to the time he had spent in the city war. Now that he had completed a few bounty quests and nothing else had happened, he logged off to rest. When Gu Fei went offline, the players didn't say anything, but the staff behind the monitor let out a long sigh of relief. In Cloud City, the OP market was still very popular. The promotional work was almost done. Now, the focus was on collecting and selecting resumes. Once they were selected, they would go on to interview. For these two matters, they had even chosen to set up their residences in 2 different districts. There was nothing they could do about it, as they were incredibly overpowered. Even though they had only used 2 residences, it was already more ostentatious than any other guild out there. Even the number 1 guild in Cloud City, Unhindered, only had a single property. The selected players had to go to 2 places, but they didn't find it troublesome at all. This was already enough to make them excited. However, the guild leader, Sword Demon, was still in jail and couldn't do anything. At the moment, OP had no other position other than the guild leader. Although the Han family young master and a few other elite squad members were commanding this and that, and the players obeyed them, the system obviously didn't recognize them. OP's authority was currently concentrated in the guild leader's hands. Therefore, the selected players couldn't join the guild for the time being. Therefore, Mr. Han slyly replied to all the players who had been interviewed that they would be waiting for further notice. In fact, they already knew which of these people were the most outstanding. However, since the Sword Ghost was not going to appear for the time being, and they could not add more people, they might as well continue sifting through them first. After all, there was no such thing as the best, only the better. Of course, the Han family young master and the others weren't Iron Men who didn't need to sleep. They just didn't deliberately control the game time like Gu Fei. These guys were busy until the morning, and then they went offline to rest. Large advertisements were posted on the entrance of each station, asking players who still wanted to sign up to send their resumes to Brother Yu's mailbox. Yunting Studio's swift and decisive headhunting operation was extremely effective. At dawn, 8 out of 11 directors of Yingqi Studio had signed a contract with Yunting Studio. 2 of them asked for 3 days to consider, and the last one was directly eliminated, 5 nights. As for the second-tier city leaders, half of them had been headhunted in 1 night. These people were easier to deal with than the directors. As soon as they changed hands, they were assigned work. Under the leadership of the senior employees of Yunting Studio, they began to conduct detailed statistics on the leveling areas in the main cities in preparation for the efficient leveling method. Both Cloud Peak and Moonlit Night City seemed to have returned to peace. After this war, many players had lost levels. The bigger the guild, the heavier the losses. During the battle, they didn't care about the gains and losses. However, after the hot-bloodedness, everyone was heartbroken and cried. Everyone began to deliberately avoid conflicts. Even the players in Moonlit Night City didn't seem so impulsive. Everyone diligently leveled up, trying to make up for their losses as soon as possible. When everyone came online the next day, it felt like a long time had passed. Everything that happened the day before was like a nightmare. The only thing that didn't change was that Sword Demon was still in prison. Even if he didn't sleep, he would have to sit for more than 10 hours a day in prison for 42 hours. Sword Demon wouldn't be able to come out for at least 2 or 3 days. He was accompanied by a fierce person like 100 Lives Jinglin. At this moment, apart from the two brothers, there was also the mage, Horini, who had been bombarding the other day and had a high PK value. Apart from the three of them, everyone else had been released successfully. The three of them now had a single room each. Two sides were very lonely, while the other side was in full swing. Although 100 Lives Jinglin hadn't been released, he had already begun to guide the work of the studio outside. Nitrite Radical would constantly send people to understand what he needed to develop the leveling efficiency method. Whenever he thought of something, they would send someone over. Throughout the day, they would come in and out. Even 100 Generations Jingshu's heart ached for the prison visitation fee. At this moment, Nitrite Root personally came and brought some information about the leveling areas that he had sorted out the night before. While 100 Lives Jinglin was still in prison, he wanted to familiarize himself with the place and kill time. As for Horini and Sword Demon, Nitrite Root knew that they were very overpowered as well, especially since one of them was an overpowered boss. He didn't dare to be negligent, so he had to ask about their well-being. Even though it was just some nonsense like whether it was cold in prison, whether it was gloomy, whether it was lonely, and so on. Gu Fei had been online for a long time yesterday. According to his habit, he would restrain himself for the next few days to adjust his body, so he didn't show up for the entire day. However, since there was no battle, no one cared whether he came or not. The extremely overpowered recruitment work continued. Han family young master, Brother Yu, and the other experts in the elite group were envious of the players' resumes, and there were many arguments in order to select the players. However, this was all just a small quarrel. At this moment, Cloud Twilight was truly in deep trouble. During the night, the 10 Guilds Alliance was not attacked at all. Although everyone listened to Cloud Twilight's orders and occupied the leveling areas to level up, they didn't find anything suspicious. After the night passed, everyone naturally relaxed a little. After the sky turned bright, the all-nighters all returned to the city to rest. It was a peaceful journey. However, at this moment, the Eagle Group's crusade officially began. They saw that most of the 10 Guilds Alliance players had gone offline to rest, and immediately began to hunt down the 10 Guilds Alliance players in the city. They didn't form groups, nor did they guard any resurrection points. They just wandered around the city randomly. The 10 Guilds Alliance players who woke up early were all in trouble. Some of these players weren't around the night before, so they naturally didn't know about the latest situation. Although Cloud Twilight ordered the guilds to leave an announcement, they still had to choose a place to gather. Hence, the 10 Guilds Alliance players were killed on the streets outside the resurrection points. Those who attacked them were all experts, and they managed to escape unscathed. When they called for their brothers and rushed over, there wasn't even a trace of them. Some cleverly thought that the other party would wait outside the resurrection point, so they purposely gathered their people and tried to lure them out. In the end, no one cared about them at all. The situation only changed after the players formed a crowd at the resurrection point. The killers didn't wander around the streets outside the resurrection point anymore. They suddenly gathered at one point and annihilated a group of 10 Guilds Alliance players outside the Mage Academy. The 10 Guilds Alliance players were terrified. The guild leader left an announcement for everyone to form groups of 30 to 50 people. There were 34 mages who gathered at the entrance of the Mage Academy, but after fighting with the other party, they didn't even manage to kill a single one of them. The mages who resurrected near the resurrection point could only watch helplessly as the opposing team swaggered off. According to the mages who took note of the other party's numbers, there were 20 of them. These 20 people were the two groups of Eagle Group. Forever's decision was to attack the 10 Guilds Alliance non-stop for 24 hours. This was just the beginning, so the attack was slightly more intense. The original 8 hours per group was changed to 16 hours per day. This way, there would be 2 groups online every 24 hours. For these madmen who loved games, playing for 16 hours a day was nothing. Even if it wasn't a job requirement, they often played like this. Although they were called to work for 8 hours this time, after Matchless Genius promised to work overtime, they didn't say anything else. Wasn't it just PK? There weren't many experts who didn't like PK. This was much more fun than helping the boss get experience. Everyone excitedly started working. For the entire morning, the 10 Guilds Alliance players were either scattered or regrouped. They were constantly being attacked. They didn't even know how many people the other party had. Every battle ended so quickly that they didn't even have time to see the other party's face before they were killed. It wasn't until the afternoon that Cloud Twilight logged back online. The guild was already in a state of tears. The players reported the situation to Cloud Twilight. They strongly pointed out one thing: a group of 30 to 50 people was still in danger. In the morning, a group of 50 people had been ambushed by the enemy. Of the 50 people, 41 were killed, and only 9 managed to escape. What was even more terrifying was that the 10 Guilds Alliance had been attacked countless times in the morning. Sometimes the other party had more people than them, but more often than not, they had more people than them. Top experts. At this time, no one had any doubts about Cloud Twilight's conclusion. What about information? So many people died. Don't tell me we didn't get any information about them. Cloud Twilight asked. Boss, I tried to appraise them, but I failed. The other party's level is too high. A level 40 player replied to Cloud Twilight. Nonsense. Of course you failed. How can an expert be lower than level 42? Cloud Twilight said. I appraised one person. A cleric said. Boss, I'll post it. After saying this, the cleric posted the records of the equipment he had appraised in the morning. It was a warrior with 9 pieces of equipment. The cleric had only appraised 5 pieces of equipment. All of them were top-notch. The players of the 10 Guilds Alliance were silent. Just this one person. Cloud Twilight said. I only had time to appraise him, and then I died. The cleric was depressed. If he died, he would lose a level. After losing a level, there was no need to talk about appraising. However, the cleric wasn't the only one who knew about the appraisal. A few other players also provided their own appraisal results. In the end, there were a total of 7 people who had appraised their equipment. Not a single one of their equipment was mediocre. Often, there were some top-notch equipment. What do you guys think? Cloud Twilight asked. Experts. Nonsense. Cloud Twilight hated talking nonsense. I'm asking if we can tell where these people are from their equipment. There was silence. Fuck, write it all down. Post it on the forums. Cloud Twilight said. With the boss's order, the players immediately went to do it. At this time, there was news of being attacked. As soon as the players came online, they naturally went out from the revival point and forgot about the guild's new announcement. As a result, not long after they left the streets, they were killed. They were stabbed from behind, and not many people knew who the murderer was. Fuck, everyone, look at the guild announcement. Don't move alone. Don't move alone. Every death felt like a slap to Cloud Twilight's face. Even if he killed himself, he wouldn't feel this much pain. This feeling of helplessness was something Cloud Twilight hated. We need to think of a way to lure them out. We tried this morning, but they didn't fall for it. I feel like they've been watching us from the shadows. The player who said this couldn't help but look left and right. Form a group of people to act as bait. Arrange a few others to temporarily remove the guild emblem. When the enemy makes their move, we'll appear together and kill them all in one fell swoop. Cloud Twilight said. We tried this too, but... One of them hesitated. But what? Cloud Twilight asked. They appeared and wiped out the bait group. Then, they broke out of the encirclement. The faster brothers chased after them, but they turned around and killed them. This is On purpose. They purposely charged out knowing that there was a trap. This was a risk to establish their might. Cloud Twilight said. But I don't understand how they let them escape. There's bound to be someone who's slower. The main force can just attack together. Another player said. There's a difference in equipment. Cloud Twilight was calm. If we're talking about overall speed, we're not as fast as them. Small groups of players won't be able to intercept them. Then what should we do? Everyone started to give Cloud Twilight a test. How many people surrounded us at the time? Cloud Twilight asked. Around 100. Change the announcement. Move with a team of at least 100 people. Cloud Twilight said. Since the enemy chose to break out of the encirclement, it means that they won't be able to face 100 people head-on. A team of 100 people should be able to protect themselves. Old Yun, we can't continue to be so passive. We have to think of a way to take the initiative. Someone said. I know, but we have to at least figure out the enemy's strength. Cloud Twilight said. Damn it, this is so frustrating. A mage gloomily shouted. Suddenly, there was a sound. A whistling arrow came from 60 meters away. The arrow pierced through the mage's head. A white light flashed, and the mage was instantly killed. Everyone was shocked. They looked towards where the arrow came from. That person was actually standing at the end of the street. After killing a person with one arrow, he didn't fire a second shot. He turned around and slowly left. Someone jumped up and wanted to chase after him, but Cloud Twilight shouted, no need. We won't be able to catch up. What a high attack. Someone exclaimed. Right now, it was 40 domains. Even a mage with low health and defense couldn't be killed so easily. Not necessarily. It might be a critical hit or something. He just happened to be in time. If he really had such a high attack, he would have killed all of us with one arrow at a time. Cloud Twilight continued to analyze carefully. Old Yun, you're right. Many people in the guild agreed. This arrow was still to show off. It was specifically aimed at that kid who was so sullen. This is to tell us that they have a clear grasp of our situation. They definitely have people in our guild. Cloud and Twilight said. Chapter 827. The Eagle Party's strength wasn't the only thing that made them fearsome. With the support of the workshop, they had a huge financial advantage. There was no need to place these spies in advance. If they needed them, they could just bribe a few with money. This depended on the player's temperament. For a team like the 10 Meetings Alliance with more than 4,000 players, the Eagle Party should be able to bribe at least one of them. Moreover, there were many temporary workers in the 10 Meetings Alliance. Those who were still able to stay were rather sly people. Things would naturally be smoother if they could get in touch with these people. This was something that the guild couldn't prevent. Even though Yun Zhongmu knew that there was a mole in the guild, there was nothing he could do. However, Yun Zhongmu's gaze shifted. Just now, the mage had only shouted in the guild channel and was killed by the enemy's sharpshooter as a demonstration. Of course, the guild members would be able to hear his shouts through the channel. However, it was a different matter if they could clearly provide his location. From this angle, Yun Zhongmu wanted to try and determine the scope of this mole, but when he looked around, he saw that there were at least 20 to 30 people around this brave mage who could easily give him a hint. Not only that, there was no lack of good friends that Yun Zhongmu had always trusted. Suspect them? Yun Zhongmu wasn't willing to. The players reacted differently to the conclusion that there was a mole. Some cursed in the guild channel, while others coldly observed the situation like Cloud Twilight. In short, suspicions and jealousy rose in the hearts of the players. The players who usually didn't like the look of these players now looked like traitors. Strange voices could be heard from time to time, and it didn't take long for two waves of arguments to break out. Yun Zhongmu felt a chill down his spine when he saw the situation. He had a deeper understanding of how terrifying the enemy was. First, the enemy used simple and crude methods to torment the 10 Meetings Alliance. Now, they were obviously exposing the existence of a mole. The 10 Meetings Alliance, which was already in a state of panic, began to suspect each other. Moreover, the 10 Meetings Alliance couldn't catch them with their sneak attacks. This way, everyone's attention would be shifted to each other. Once they were attacked, they would suspect that someone had betrayed the team. If the team broke up, they could form another one. However, if the people's hearts were broken, then they couldn't lead the team anymore. Yun Jongmu deeply understood this reasoning, but there was no way he could uncover a mole. This shadow would only grow larger and larger. Cloud Twilight was at his wit's end and anxious. He could only post in the guild channel that all moles were shameless paper tigers and that there was nothing to be afraid of. Although there were many responses, Yun Jongmu knew that it was useless to erase the shadow in everyone's hearts. Cloud Twilight even felt a bit regretful. He shouldn't have deduced that there was a traitor based on the archer's ambush. This was something that only he knew about, and he shouldn't have said it out loud. Cloud Twilight discovered that there was still a lot of room for improvement in his leadership skills. With low morale, Yun Jongmu led the group out of the main city. Where were they going now? Cloud Twilight didn't know, and the players following him didn't ask either. Everyone just quietly followed the group. Only when they left the main city gates did Yun Jongmu suddenly wake up. He turned around to look at his 100 or so brothers. Time to level up. Dusk in the Cloud waved his arm, looking very spirited. He had to bury his gloomy mood deep down. Although he felt that the enemy was becoming more and more terrifying, he still had to look down on them. Yun Jongmu didn't seem to care about the enemy's ambush at all. This really made the players in the group more spirited. The journey was uneventful. This group of more than 100 players arrived at the leveling area. Yun Jongmu carefully arranged the formation, telling everyone not to split up too much. They had to be prepared to fight at any time. Naturally, there were still players from the 10 Guild Alliance coming online. After seeing the guild announcement and hearing about the tragedy that had happened all morning, everyone was very cautious. They formed groups at the resurrection point and were determined not to go out with less than 100 players. However, the opponents were very patient and determined. They continued to wait quietly in the streets and alleys near the resurrection point. If any of the players from the 10 Guild Alliance were to be careless, they would immediately be ambushed. However, compared to the situation in the morning, the situation was much better. Even so, some people in the guild couldn't help but say to Dusk in the Cloud, "Boss, how about we don't wear the guild emblem for now?" The guild emblem of the 10 Guild Alliance was the symbol of Moonlit Night City's dominance, but now, they had to hide it in the face of pressure. Naturally, Dusk was very angry. How could Yun Jongmu not have thought of such a simple method? However, hiding it wasn't to his liking. It wasn't to Dusk's liking, and of course, it wasn't to the liking of his friends. Before Dusk could say anything, one of his friends yelled, "What are you afraid of? I'm wearing it. If they have the guts, come and kill us all." It was rare for Yun Jongmu to laugh sincerely for once. No matter what, he would always have a group of brothers who would advance and retreat with him. This was what made him the happiest. When he thought about how even if they lost levels, they would all lose together. Even if the guild was disbanded, the hearts of his brothers would never fade away. Dusk felt that the expert elite group was just bullshit. He immediately laughed in the chat, "That's right, these bastards are just sneaky. Everyone, be careful and don't go out unless there are 100 of us. 100 of us will level, 100 of us will do quests, and 100 of us will set up stalls on the streets. We won't give them any opportunities. Let's see how long these clowns can last." Dusk's speech this time was quite encouraging, and the guild channel was filled with cheers. The guild members could also look out for each other. If they discovered a new guild friend, they would immediately notify them. After all, not many players had the habit of looking at the guild announcement as soon as they logged on. The players who went to the forums to ask for information had already returned. They directly sent a private message to Dusk in the Cloud, "Boss, I'm back. How did it go?" Dusk knew that it wouldn't be difficult to find out. If it was just one or two pieces of exquisite equipment, it naturally wouldn't represent their identity. However, when a few pieces of exquisite equipment were put together, the scope would be reduced by a lot. Moreover, these guys were very skilled in the game, and their cooperation was very good. With such outstanding equipment, it was impossible for them to be unknown in the game. Could it be that a team of experts suddenly fell from the sky and caused trouble for the 10 Guilds Alliance? Didn't we appraise 8 sets of equipment? 3 of them were definitely identified by the replies below. We didn't appraise the other 2 sets completely, and the replies were also guessing. There are still 3 sets that were ignored. Who are the 3 confirmed? Dusk in the Cloud asked. Warriors Maple Blood, Thieves 8 West 3, Fighters Every Punch to the Flesh, the subordinate replied quickly. They really are experts. Dusk in the Cloud was amazed. Since he was once one of the top 5, Dusk in the Cloud had the pleasure of flipping through the experience leaderboard. The 3 names mentioned seemed familiar to Dusk in the Cloud, and he was sure that he had definitely seen them at the top of the leaderboard. The player who went to the forums immediately replied, "Yes, I went to check the experience leaderboard. Maple Blood is currently ranked 19th for Warriors, 8 West 3 is ranked 14th for Thieves, and Every Punch to the Flesh is ranked 8th for Fighters." The experience leaderboard was the overall ranking of the tens of millions of players in the game. The top 5, top 10, top 7, and casual players that the players were talking about were actually only a few dozen people. On these leaderboards, not to mention the top 10 and top 100, even the top 1000 were definitely extraordinary gaming fanatics. Other than people like Gu Fei, who was super technical, or people like Matchless Genius, who was willing to throw money at them, normal players wouldn't be able to get so much experience if they didn't spend a lot of time in the game. Of course, there were experts in the 10 Guilds Alliance, but based on the experience leaderboard, the 10 Guilds Alliance was clearly inferior in terms of the quality of experts. The experts that came were among the best in the entire game, but what about the 10 Guilds Alliance? They were among the best in Moonlit Night City, but in the entire game, they were in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th digits. Although they were quite impressive among the tens of millions of people, they were still a little lacking. And the 2 that you mentioned, who are they? Yun Zhongmu continued to ask. One is Flute, who is ranked 13th on the Night leaderboard, and the other is Eagle, who is ranked 8th on the Thief leaderboard. Damn it, are the others also as powerful as him? They don't look like they gathered together at the last minute. Where did so many experts come from? Yun Zhongmu didn't understand. Could it be that one of the 100 main cities in the game had good water and soil, and the monsters that they raised were richer than the other main cities, and so they raised such experts? There should be a limit even for elite teams. Now, out of the 8 of them, after smashing 5 bricks, 2 of them were in the top 10, and the other 3 were also in the top 20. The other 3 were unknown, and it was unknown whether they would be able to get into the top 100 or more. Guild Master, someone on the forums mentioned where these people came from. Fuck, why didn't you say so earlier? Yun Zhongmu roared. They're a mercenary group called the Eagle Group. It was founded by Eagle, and that's how they got their name. However, the current leader is the first knight, Eternal. Eternal. Anyone would have a deep impression of a character whose name was at the top of the leaderboard. Of course, Yun Zhongmu knew of such a majestic figure on the Night leaderboard. However, there were many big cities in the parallel world, and many experts were only heard of, but never seen. There was no cheap teleportation function in the game, and everyone lived their lives in their own main cities. They never had the chance to see the world. For example, Reigning the 4 Seas and the others had visited 5 to 6 main cities after a single quest. This kind of experience was rare among players. Is there any other news about this Eagle Group? Yun Zhongmu calmed himself down and continued to understand the situation. I heard that there are 30 people in this group, and they're all experts on the leaderboard. They're the real deal, and they're the real deal. Their activity isn't limited to a single main city, and they're no strangers to the players in the southeast region of the parallel world. They've been hired to complete quite a few extremely difficult quests, and they're quite famous in the southeast region. Where are we on the world map? Yun Zhongmu suddenly thought of this question. Southwest. I heard that Cloud City is the main city in the southwest. This player seemed to have some understanding of the world. One in the west, one in the east. We've always minded our own business, but now that they've come to cause trouble, it seems like they've been bribed by Ying Qi. They're quite brave to make a move against the 10 Guilds Alliance. Go and find out more information about the Eagle Group. Since they're so famous, it shouldn't be hard to dig up information on all 30 of them, right? Yun Zhongmu said. An unknown enemy was always scarier. Yun Zhongmu's nervousness finally calmed down a little when he understood the enemy's background, especially when he knew that they were just a mercenary group of 30 people. The 10 Guilds Alliance had 4,000 players, and even the elites of a 30-man party were no match for them. Of course, the enemy wouldn't use a direct confrontation strategy, so they could only target lone players like they did today. They didn't dare to fight against a 100-man party. The player immediately went offline after hearing the command, and went to the forums to find out more about the Eagle Group. Yun Zhongmu was giving a morale-boosting speech in the guild chat. Comrades, we've already figured out the enemy's background. It's a mercenary group of 30 people from the southeast region, called the Eagle Group. I heard that they're quite famous in the southeast region, and they're all top-notch experts. We're going to let them know that in our southwest region, in our Moonlit Night City's territory, they're nothing. Not even a feather, not even a feather. The guild was filled with boorish cries. Just when everyone thought Yun Zhongmu was going to say something exciting, his speech was already over, and he only said one sentence in the end, "All right, let's continue with what we were doing." Some couldn't hold it in any longer, and messaged Yun Zhongmu, asking for their next step. Find out more about them. This was Yun Zhongmu's reply. The moonlit street of Moonlit Night City was a place where players set up stalls and traded. This street led straight to the central plaza of the main city, and was wide and spacious. Both sides of the street were filled with players setting up stalls, stretching as far as the eye could see. Moonlit Night City had just finished a major battle, and the previously lifeless market due to the currency adjustment was now bustling with activity. Now that he knew the value of gold coins, he had to buy some equipment to protect himself no matter what, since he was already naked. The moonlit street was bustling with people, and the sounds of bargaining could be heard everywhere. This was the biggest difference from the system auction house, where buyers and sellers traded face to face, and there was a lot of room for negotiation. At this moment, there was a 100-man party from the 10 Guilds Alliance, and they were majestically strolling down the street. These people had lost some equipment in the previous city war, and they obviously had to make up for it now. They obeyed the guild leader's orders, and even formed a 100-man party. As soon as they entered the street, many of the players were so shocked that they prepared to close up their stalls. They were from the 10 Guilds Alliance. Why did they suddenly gather so many people, apart from PvP? It was just that they didn't know which guild was going to be in trouble. Of course, the players of the 10 Guilds Alliance were used to being arrogant. Even though they were forced to form an alliance, and it was a little embarrassing to say it out loud, just the aura of the alliance was enough to scare a considerable number of players to the ground. A warrior laughed as he walked to a small stall, pointed at an iron belt, and asked for the price. The stall owner was stunned for a moment before answering. Hence, the bargaining seemed no different from a normal transaction. At the same time, the people from the 10 Guilds Alliance also scattered and began to sweep up the stalls, and when they saw something they liked, they went up to talk to the stall owner. The players finally understood that the 10 Guilds Alliance was here to purchase. However, was there a need to make such a big scene when it came to purchasing? The puzzled players soon knew the answer, because within a moment, another group of people appeared at the end of the street. It was a neat group of 30 people, and each of them had equipment that more or less exuded an unusual brilliance. The most interesting thing in the trading street was equipment, so a large number of players appraised this group of people, and in the end, most of them were defeated. Their levels were insufficient. Of course, they were experts with high levels and good equipment, and there were a total of 30 experts. The moment the 30 experts stepped into Moonlight Street, many people in the group suddenly became busy. Rays of light appeared one after another, and the 30 people began to buff each other. Some of the skills and spells were unknown to the players present. However, they at least knew one thing: the 10 Guilds Alliance was considered to be the first to form a group to shop, but if a group of people had to buff each other, they couldn't naively think that they were here to shop. The tactful players had already slipped away quietly, and countless players who set up stalls began to roll up their bags. There were too many players on the street who noticed this scene, including the people from the 10 Guilds Alliance. However, compared to others, they were more aware of these people's intentions. It's the Eagle Party in the trading street. It's the Eagle Party in the trading street. Someone hurriedly sent out a message. Needless to say, this group of people in front of them was the Eagle Party, because it was impossible to gather such an eye-catching group in Moonlight City. The person in front of the 30 people was a paladin, and just when everyone thought he was going to say something, he suddenly drew his sword and pointed, and only said one word: charge. The 100 people from the 10 Guilds Alliance had already scattered after entering the trading street. At this moment, there were still 2/3 of the people who were unaware that the Eagle Party had already set their eyes on them. They had only found out from the guild channel that the Eagle Party was attacking them in Moonlight Street. The resistance formed by a few stragglers did not seem to have any effect at all. The Eagle group swept past them, leaving white light behind. Moonlight Street was in chaos. Fortunately, the players of Moonlight City were very experienced in PvP, and when they saw that it was a battle that did not concern them, they wisely squeezed to the sides of the street, leaving the space in the middle for the people who wanted to fight. Return to the group, all of you, return to the group. The leader of the shopping group shouted anxiously at the scattered players. Chapter 828. The players from the 10 Guilds Alliance, who had rushed over in a hurry, were no match for the Eagle Legion. They had no positioning, and their attacks weren't coordinated. All they could do was rush over as fast as they could, and then hurriedly cast their skills as soon as they were within attack range. Then, they saw the Eagle Legion taking the brunt of his skills and pouncing on him, knocking him to the ground. In this chaotic situation, he didn't even know who he had contributed his PK points to. A warrior tried to use charge and whirlwind slash to disrupt the opponent's formation. In the end, when he activated charge, a warrior in the opponent's formation also stepped forward and used charge to resist. After the system judgment, the poor warrior of the 10 Meetings Alliance was kite like a kite. Everyone was naturally shocked. After the judgment, the party with the higher attack had the upper hand, but the damage of the party with the lower attack was not negligible. At this time, the party that collided with the warrior was actually sent flying by the charge. It was as if he did not attack at all. This could only mean that the difference in damage between the two charges was too great. In the end, after the warrior of the Eagle Party used charge, he suddenly flew into the air with his swords in both hands, paused for a moment, and then quickly fell into the 10 Meetings Alliance's formation. 2 streaks of sword light cut through the formation, and the ground trembled. Players with enough PK points could appreciate this skill from the pursuing system guards, Earth-Shattering Slash. Not only did this skill deal AoE damage, but it also had a chance to stun. However, the chance was not high, and the players around the warrior were obviously still controlling themselves. But before they could react, the warrior had already swung his 2 swords, and swept up a huge whirlwind slash in their formation. Under the sword light, white light danced. The players of the Eagle Party very tacitly split into 2, and went around the range of the warrior's whirlwind slash from the left and right sides. The players who did not die under the whirlwind slash were killed by them, and then regrouped at the other end of the team, and continued to kill the 10 Meetings Alliance players. The players of the 10 Meetings Alliance had finally gathered, but they could not hold their ground. The Eagle Party's ambush had wiped out 37 of their members. Including their party leader, the remaining 63 members were like headless flies. They were no different from NPC monsters. The only smart thing was that when they realized that the situation wasn't looking good, some of them decided to run without hesitation. Of course, the warriors and priests knew that the ones running away were either thieves or archers. They expressed their heroic spirit that they would rather die than cower in the face of danger. Hold on, brothers. I'm going to call for reinforcements. Good brother, when it comes to asking for reinforcements, just send a message. We will advance and retreat together here. Such touching conversations were not uncommon. It could be seen that even the hot-blooded and heroic moonlit night city had some wretched existences. The call for help had been sent out a long time ago, and Yun Jongmu had already led his troops back. But when he arrived at Moon Street, everything was over. This was just an online game. There wouldn't be blood on the ground, nor would there be corpses. There would only be peace. But for the largest market street in Moonlit Night City, silence was the scariest atmosphere. In front of everyone's eyes, not a single person from the 10 Meetings Alliance's shopping group survived. All of them were killed by the 30-man team that suddenly appeared. The players of Moonlit Night City were quite discerning when it came to PvP. They could tell that the 30-man team was top-notch in terms of skills, equipment, coordination, and awareness. It wasn't strange to see one or two of these players, but 30 of them had appeared at the same time. Everyone was trying to guess where they came from. At this moment, the players were still standing on both sides of the street discussing amongst themselves, as if they had forgotten why they were here. Yun Jongmu's expression was steely. He had just said in the guild chat that this was just a 30-man mercenary group. They weren't worth anything, and wouldn't dare to fight against their 100-man team. But then, Eagle's team gathered together and annihilated the 100-man team of the 10 Meetings Alliance. Objective reasons such as the quality of their members and the coordination of their tactics were all useless. This was a huge slap in the face to the morale that Yun Jongmu had just said, "Forever huh?" Yun Jongmu muttered this name. Since this person was the team leader, then the strategies of Eagle's team should have been set up by him. This person clearly had a good sense of strategy. His attacks didn't just annihilate 100 people. These attacks created a huge pressure that was difficult to deal with. Those bastards from Eagle's team, they were all gone by the time I arrived, Yun Jongmu said in the guild chat. How many people can recognize these bastards? Yun Jongmu yelled. He decided to take the initiative. If they continued to defend passively, they would really die. Eagle's team didn't wear masks. After so many attacks, many people remembered some of their faces and spoke up in the guild chat. Alright, you guys listen up. Take off your guild badges and walk around the city. Pay attention to the streets near the revival point. If you find any of them, send a private message to the guild leader, Yun Jongmu instructed. Sending a private message to the guild leader was Yun Jongmu's counter-espionage tactic. He wasn't afraid of the enemy finding out. However, whether or not he found them, he couldn't let the news leak out. The guild leaders of all 10 guilds were trustworthy people. Yun Jongmu told them to notify the guild leader when they found them. Then, they would find reliable people to organize an attack. Even killing one or two of the enemy's players was fine. That way, they wouldn't be so passive and they wouldn't be so nervous. His eyes and ears began to spread out to search for the whereabouts of Eagle's team members. Yun Jongmu began to choose trustworthy people to fight with. The brothers who had been with him for a long time were naturally trustworthy. Yun Jongmu even had a bit of blind trust in them. Zhu Xian, the first strategist, and the others were often scolded and looked down upon by Yun Jongmu. However, if these people really became the enemy's spies, Yun Jongmu wouldn't be able to scold them at all. These people were obviously added to the team by Yun Jongmu. Then, he thought of some reliable people and even sent people offline to call for reinforcements. Although Yun Jongmu felt that there were many people he could trust, it was hard to predict a person's heart. The more people there were, the greater the risk. After gathering around 150 people, Yun Jongmu felt that it was about time. Although the 100-man team had been badly beaten on Moonlight Street, there were many objective factors. Yun Jongmu believed that the hot-blooded team that he personally led could rival any 30-man team in the game, apart from Qianli's drunk. Just as he was gathering his men, the spies he sent out suddenly reported back. They found Eagle's team near the Thieves' Guild. I only recognized one person, but there are 3 others with him, the spies said. What are they doing? I don't know. I think they're just walking around, the spies replied. Can you keep an eye on them? They haven't found me yet, the spies said. Okay, keep an eye on them. Be careful, we'll be there soon. Yun Jongmu quickly gathered his men. Of course, 150 people couldn't be coincidentally in the same place, but there were only 4 of them. There was no need for 150 people. Plus, they couldn't miss this opportunity. As a result, 54 people gathered as quickly as possible and rushed towards the Thieves' Guild. They're on the 3rd street of the Thieves' Guild. They turned to the 2nd street. They turned back to the square. They entered the 4th street again. I think they're just randomly looking to see if they can bump into our people. The spies continued to report while making some analysis. Hee, they'll find them soon. Zhu Xian smiled lewdly. Following the spies' directions, they had already reached the 4th street. Describe the 4 of them, Yun Jongmu said. 1 knight, 1 warrior, 1 thief, and 1 priest, the spies replied. Oh, they don't have any long-range professions. We can easily kill them. The first-generation tactician started talking nonsense. Duan Yun, take half of your men and enter from this side. I'll take a detour and intercept them from that side. Yun Jongmu arranged a strategy. It can't be that bad, old Yun. There's only 1 thief out of the 4. The other 3 can't run even if they want to, so why do we need to intercept them? Just send a few people to the other side. Duan Yun said. Yun Jongmu thought about it and felt that it made sense. There really wasn't a need to split half of his men just to deal with 1 thief. As a result, he randomly picked a few thieves and archers to go around. After the arrangements were made, Yun Jongmu waved his hand and a group of brothers rushed into the Thieves' Guild's 4th Street with murderous intent. This was just an ordinary street. There weren't too many people, but there weren't too few either. Players who liked to do business near the revival point would usually set up their stalls in the plaza outside the Thieves' Guild instead of here. This was a purely passageway. The only people coming and going were players who were in a hurry. They all rushed forward as fast as they could. Even though there were only 4 of them, Yun Jongmu didn't let his guard down. After entering the street, he arranged for everyone to stand in formation and advance. Zhu Xian said a few words of arrogance, which naturally drew another wave of curses. The group walked along the street for nearly halfway. They gradually saw 4 players on the left side of the street, 2 in front and 2 behind. They were casually walking towards them. They were too far away and couldn't use identify, but looking at their equipment, they completely matched the 4 classes of warrior, knight, thief, and priest. Spread out a bit, spread out a bit. Walk slowly, Cloud Twilight ordered. The other side should recognize him, but Yun Jongmu was a thief. Covering his face was both safe and reasonable, so he wasn't afraid of alerting them. As for recognizing the guild emblem, the other side clearly didn't have an archer. By the time they recognized the emblem, Yun Jongmu and the others had already pounced on them. The street was very quiet, and the channel was also very quiet. Once the battle started, even Zhu Xian didn't dare to make any noise. Everyone left the channel to the commander, Yun Jongmu. 50 meters, 40 meters, 30 meters, the other side was getting closer and closer. Yun Jongmu could feel the sweat on his palms. He sneaked a glance at the brothers on his left and right. They were all walking quite casually. At this moment, they didn't seem to be in any battle formation. Unless they could recognize the guild emblem from this far away, they wouldn't be able to tell that they were on the same side. Why aren't we being more careful? Maybe we should take off the emblem. Yun Jongmu suddenly felt very uneasy. They were facing a great enemy, but they still wanted to wear the emblem to take revenge. Wasn't that a little too childish? But if he asked everyone to take it off, wouldn't it attract attention? Yun Jongmu was still thinking about this small detail, but they were getting closer and closer to the enemy. Finally, someone in the channel couldn't help but remind him, "Old Yun. Are we attacking now? They don't seem to have noticed us. Are we waiting for them to walk into our formation and then suddenly attack? Won't we be able to surround them that way? Yun Zhongmu, who was walking in front, could already see the four faces clearly. Seeing that they didn't seem to have noticed, Yun Zhongmu suddenly felt conflicted. It's just against 4 people. Am I being a little too cautious? Yun Zhongmu had already brushed past the 4 people. He immediately had this self-mocking thought. Just as he was about to give the order to attack, he suddenly realized that in front of him, there were players coming towards him. Some were walking, some were running, and all of them were moving so naturally. They were practically the same as his group. Yun Zhongmu suddenly realized something and shouted in the channel, "Not good, we've been tricked." What? Everyone stared at the channel and was just about to yell at Yun Zhongmu to attack, but who would have thought that Yun Zhongmu would suddenly say something like this? Immediately after, Yun Zhongmu roared again, "Kill these 4." Everyone had been waiting for these words. Even though they didn't understand why Yun Zhongmu had been tricked, they had been preparing for a long time to attack these 4 people. Yun Zhongmu's group of old friends were naturally experienced in killing people. They stood at the front and didn't rush to attack. Instead, they directly brushed past the opponents, first cutting off their path of retreat. The players behind them stood in front of them and prevented them from moving forward. The ones who were truly the main attackers were the ones furthest away from the 4 people. They were the mages and archers who had long-range attacks. There were people blocking the front and back, and the gap in the middle would be accurately attacked by the mages and archers. The only way out was to quickly clear out the players blocking them. Of course, this wasn't that easy. Yun Zhongmu's trusted friends weren't that easy to deal with. However, these 4 people didn't seem to want to do so. The cleric among the 4 suddenly raised his staff. Yun Zhongmu, who wasn't far from them, heard him shout, "Mana barrier." A wave of white light suddenly spread out, instantly condensing into a small ball with a diameter of 3 meters. The other 3 people also stood beside the cleric, and the 4 of them entered the ball of light. The heavenly firewall descended, but was blocked outside the ball of light. The flaming 3,000 layers flame rose from the ground, but was also blocked outside the 3-meter diameter. Only the arrows of the archers seemed to have encountered nothing. They directly passed through the ball of light and struck the 4 people. However, the warrior immediately raised his shield and blocked all the arrows. This mana barrier was clearly ineffective against physical attacks. Moreover, after this wave of magic attacks, the light of the ball of light dimmed a lot. At this moment, the cleric was still holding his staff without moving. It was clear that this was a spell that needed to be maintained for a long period of time. "Continue attacking," Yun Zhongmu roared. He estimated that this spell wouldn't last for long. "I didn't expect Boss Yun to come personally." Yun Zhongmu heard a voice beside his ear. He saw that one of the 4 knights had actually taken the initiative to walk out of the mana barrier and attack him with his sword. "Forever." Cloud Twilight dodged to the side, dodging the sword. The opponent's speed shocked him. This was definitely an attack that had added points into agility. Yun Zhongmu had never encountered a knight like this before. "Not bad." After replying, Eternal raised his hand and cast a spell. Yun Zhongmu felt his body tighten. Then, he saw a jet-black sword flash towards him. Yun Zhongmu hurriedly dodged again, but this time, his movements were actually a bit slower. Dark Knight. Yun Zhongmu was also a knowledgeable person. Before level 40, the knight profession had some blessing skills that strengthened the player's attributes. However, after the profession change at level 40, the Radiant Knight's blessing skills would be strengthened, while the Dark Knight's blessing skills would be greatly weakened. In this way, the Dark Knight's skills before level 40 were basically useless. This clearly didn't make sense. As such, after the profession change, the player could choose to change their skills from Darkness Corruption, Blessing to Curse. This was a free choice question. The player could continue to be a blessing and not a cursor. There were quite a few Dark Knights who kept their blessing skills temporarily. According to their research, curses were more useful in PvP. As for leveling up, a half-baked blessing was much more useful than a curse. Of course, there were dark knights who used curses in Twilight's guild. His movements had suddenly slowed down. Evidently, his agility had been cursed. After dodging the sword, he looked at his stats page. As expected, his agility had been weakened. Eternal's knight had obviously added points into agility. The knight profession was balanced. There were no advantages or disadvantages in any of the attributes, so there was no harm in adding anything. Yun Zhongmu had seen many that added points into constitution and intelligence. He had also seen those that added points into agility, but he had never seen one that added as much as Eternal. This was because after being cursed, he discovered that his speed was actually not as fast as Eternal's. Being unable to rely on speed to fight was fatal for an assassin. Yun Zhongmu's heart hardened. He simply rushed forward and shouted to his other brothers, "Fight!" Before, everyone had not realized why Yun Zhongmu was tricked, but now they knew why they had to fight. Because their opponents weren't just 4 people, but 30 people. A whole 30 people. The casual crowd on the street was just as pretentious as them. As soon as the battle began, they had already quickly rushed forward. This was a trap. Yun Zhongmu thought of guarding against a mole, but he did not expect the mole to directly pretend to be an informant and directly send out false information to lure them over. It could be said that he had betrayed them to the end. On one side were the 50 elites of the 10 Guilds Alliance, and on the other side were the 30 who could be counted as elites in the entire game. Although Yun Zhongmu had the advantage in numbers, he had to admit that they were the ones who needed to fight. Butterfly Knot, I just didn't write a summary yesterday. There were actually many comrades who were concerned about what happened to me in private messages. Sigh, there's really no way. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.